The Ken Baker Show.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Freaky Friday right here on Truth Frequency Radio, truthfrequencyradio.com. I'm Joe Joseph. It's 23rd of January, 2015, and damn, do we have a good Freaky Friday for you tonight. Alongside me, man, we got just a room full of people here. We got Kev Baker, Marty and Johnny Whistles of the Kev Baker Show, and then myself and Johnny King. But the real treat, boys, tonight is our good friend Freeman, who joins us from FreemanTV.com. And he's been at the forefront of conspiracy theory for nearly 2 decades. Freeman created the first documentary on HAARP and televised the first documentary on chemtrails. It's pretty significant considering how much that's in the consciousness of everybody today. You know, when you go outside, you see the chemtrails, and most, if not everybody, knows, at least as far as in my interactions, that's not normal, and at least that's getting some mainstream recognition now, geoengineering, etc. He's also been honored by the Mayan shamans and blessed by the King of Bungalung while enlightening the world on the occult aspects of Hollywood and technology and politics with his TV show, The Freeman Perspective. Freeman's lectured around the world, and he unveiled the inner workings of secret societies such as the Freemasons and shows you the direction this new world is going. New world. Freeman starts with where Alex Jones leaves off. In the spirit of David Icke and James Redfield, Freeman illustrates a world that is both cosmic and miraculous. He presents hope displayed in the creative spirit of humanity. And without further ado, welcome, Freeman, to the broadcast of Freaky Friday.
Hey, thank you so much for that. Can you believe 10 years this year for me of broadcasting?
Yeah, no, that is just unbelievable. And it's just great. I mean, Freaky Friday has been just a recent creation here at TFR, and it's just taken off like wildfire. Each week is just better than the next. And it just, the energy, it just gains energy. And a lot of it has to do with the good listeners out there. And let's take a second before we get to Freeman and recognize our listeners. Marty, you got the chat room, baby.
Yeah, so before we get going with the show tonight, I want to give everybody a warm welcome in the chat room and a big thank you for tuning in. Shout out to One of Two, Alpha Dog, Angel Whispers, Bag of Chips, Be the Change, Krazza Tricky, Dartmoor Dog, Dusty Dead, Flower Child, Gary Catlover, Gentleman Skeptic, Harold, Jim, Jobby, Joe Joseph, Kevty, Matt D, Meat Dog, Mitty Boosh, My Knee, North of South, Nosboy, Paisley Buddy, Penelope, Resistance, Robbie DMC, Silverman, Start the Oracle, Stushy, The Darkness, Matt, Brett, Hell Yeah, John Titter, Kev, Blart, Malcop.
Oh, really?
Brilliant. Rogues.
Oh.
Den, Steve, Jacob, Blood of Tyrants, Stefan Rinson, Gents, AI, Zeri Hero, Arthur Strong, and Russell Brand. A couple of new ones in there tonight, so thank you.
Absolutely. 50 in the chat. Absolutely. Well, nearly 50 in the chat. That is fantastic. People listening further afield as well. Big warm welcome. Now, I'm just going to get right into it here, Freeman. And I think, you've been broadcasting for 10 years, but I think we have to go back even further than that. Because when we look at your childhood, and I've heard you speaking about this before, it really was kind of destined that you would end up covering this kind of information, I think. So could you tell us about your upbringing and how you were really on a path to this kind of woo in the first place?
Yeah, it definitely seemed that way. Sorry, I was trying to go to the the chat room, but I'm actually getting you back in my headset. So anyway, I would say that. I would say that I was, and I wonder about this. Okay, so we're looking at a situation on our planet where we are dealing with reality manufacturers. And so then each of us has to look at our generation and see what has been implanted into us to understand some of the scheme that they're performing around us. So when I was 10 years old, I was into ancient aliens, UFOs, abductions. I knew about Akhenaten, and so right from my very earliest age, I was into ciphers and codes and all of this stuff. And when you consider that at 10 years old, this was really intriguing me. Star Wars had just come out, and that threw me into another layer, another level of things. But there again, the programming comes in where you're like, okay, what did Lucas put into me with the Force and the ideas of this good and dark, and how much they are utilizing that power for the last, well, I don't even know, 30 years. How long has it been? Star Wars 77. You do the math.
Nearly 40 years. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And still, to this day, you go to your Target, you go to your Walmart, and you'll see the Star Wars programming, the Dark Force programming. And, of course, Star Wars is currently owned by Disney Co., and they'll be putting out the dark side of the Force in these latest movies.
And measles, too, by the way, Freeman.
Oh, that's true, too. You better get your vaccinations before going to the park.
That's right.
Yes, everybody. We'll be giving them at the front of the park. As soon as you give us your thumbprint, your biometrics, your retinal scan. Well, we'll let you guy without the retinal scan, but we're going to need facial biometrics. We're going to need, yeah. And then we'll take your blood and give you a vaccination. It'll all be good. Come on into Disney Co. Yeah. So all of this, so there's two lines of thinking I'm giving to you right now. Is one, yeah, I was totally into all of this type of ancient alien stuff and really looking at the planet from a different perspective. I was into Baalbek, Lebanon, and knowing that these blocks were 1,200 tons and they were just too big for mankind to even move. And at the same time, I'm now currently aware of Nazi agendas. If I can, I like to refer to these people as Nazis because they track so much to the Nazi mind control programming. We're rewriting history and have introduced this ancient astronaut concept into our generation. So when you realize that most of the stuff I picked up in the early days of ancient astronaut study was from like Time Life and Time Warner, and for me these corporations are at their corporate logo is the eye of Ra, right? So I start to look and analyze as to what's been put in and then what can't be ignored, because you can't ignore the ancient architecture. You can't ignore the fact that there was this, high technological advancement in the ancient past that we can't explain. It's over and over again. It's there. That's the evidence. But then the history is where Nazi-esque type propaganda comes into the situation, and they start to craft a history for us that is plausible, feeds into our belief systems and everything. So, yeah. And then, then to find out my dad was involved in all of that by college. And then I'm like, wow, this is bizarre. And
yeah, because
so, yes.
you mentioned the Nazis there, and I was absolutely blown away earlier on today to hear about the connection to the Nazis that your mother actually had when she was growing up, and then her upbringing in France.
Well, yeah, we're doing a lot of studies, a lot of understanding these days of how genetic memory carries over. And of course, this was huge in the Nazi studies, and that's why they did a lot of twin studies. And genetic memory has now been proven as a scientific fact that we actually carry information from generation to generation. So I have a piece of my mom and my dad's DNA in me and their memory in me. And so that was absolutely, because when you look at them, my mom let's get back to the beginning here. She was actually in a Catholic school. Her mom died really early on, and my grandfather, her dad, was ardent anti-Nazi, and so he was always hiding in the woods in the mountains somewhere, sneaking into town like he was, just getting his supplies and such. And so mom was raised by the Catholics, but then the Nazis came in and they rescued my mom from Catholicism.
Go figure, eh?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So the Nazis go to this Catholic school that my mom is at. My mom has told me trauma stories that have occurred to her, like they would make their own dresses and all the kids would spit on them. The nuns would have all the children surround her and her sister and have her spit on them because their sleeves were too short, So, there was this going on in the Catholicism. Then the Nazis show up and they go into the subterranean chambers under the Catholic school, and they find baby bones and signs of ritual abuse and ritual murder and all of this. And so the Nazis bring all this evidence up to the surface, and they're like, look who you're dealing with, and we're going to rescue you. So then mom becomes a Nazi youth, and she's like, well, everybody was a Nazi youth. I try to talk to my mom about this stuff, like, well, the Pope, he's a Nazi youth from Bavaria. You don't, the Pope is a Nazi youth from Bavaria. And she's like, well, I'm a Nazi youth from Bavaria. Yeah, all right. Just kind of left like, well, all right. She also met Walt Disney. So then she's like, oh, he was a lovely man, Like, God, I can't win here. So then she was actually shipped off for the war to France. And her first American she ever saw was a black man that rolled up in a tank in her front lawn and took over her house. It was also the first black person she had ever seen.
Wow.
And they really welcomed the Americans. They brought them chocolate and all of this kind of stuff. So they just had to give up their beds and whatnot. But she was being raised by a woman who was a renowned witch or healer in this region. Like, people would come for hundreds of miles to have this lady go out in the moonlight, crossing herself, doing these incantations to cure warts on cattle's uterus, stuff like that.
You see, that's the thing. Probably we would look at her somewhere else in a different era as being some kind of medicine woman or something like that. But because of the times, that's deemed witchcraft almost.
It was witchcraft. No, she was totally out there. My mom showed me a couple of the rituals that she would never perform. My mom said it totally freaked her out. She had nothing to do with it. But
so what happens during that then, Freeman? What happens during one of these witch rituals?
Well, she showed me, and the words were all in German, but she kind of translated them, and they were rather silly, I guess maybe the translation, but anyway, they were pretty simple words, but a very strict method that you had to go out under these certain 3 full moons and circle around an altar or a fire. I'm not sure what she never really said, I guess, but you circle around while hobbling and crossing yourself and chanting these words. And according to people all around the region, this absolutely worked.
Wow. That's unbelievable. That's pretty mad stuff, man.
Yeah, I used to have the spell. It got lost over the years.
Johnny King.
You mean to tell me you don't go outside and walk around an altar and chant incantations to cure your cow's warts udder?
Only on the solstice, Johnny.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe I was the only one.
So also your father, Freeman, I believe he was part of Project Blue Book. Is that correct?
So Dad came up. He was somewhat abused as a child as well. And he ended up in Bavaria as a Freemason and in the war. So he was on Killer One submarine with Jimmy Carter. And I still have all the pictures of him on this submarine with Jimmy, and he actually wrote to Jimmy Carter when he became president. And I have those letters and such as well. But so he started out in the submarine radar, sonar situation, and moved from that to Project Bluebeam. So then he became Project Bluebeam, and he was stationed on an island in the South Seas. And it was interesting because I've now got confirmation of this situation, because my dad told me he was stationed on this island with 4 radar dishes, and whenever a UFO, a flying saucer, as he said, flew over, it was his job to report it.
Wow. Now, when he was in the submarine, did he have any underwater experiences at all before he got to this Project Blue Book?
Yeah, see, he never told me. He was, and a creepy sort of weird thing was that when I started the Freeman Perspective in 2005, the TV show on Access, I scheduled my dad as my first whistleblower. And I had it all set up to go down there and film him and get his story, because he never gave me much at all. Like, what I'm giving you is about all I know. And he died the day of the interview. Did not wake up that morning. And to me, this was always bizarre, just because no one expected it. He was only 65. It wasn't it wasn't like he was on his deathbed or anything like that. It just the day. And that was truly bizarre.
No conspiracy involved there, do you think?
I wonder for sure. I wonder about what kind of programming could have gone into him, what sort of mind control he might have been under. It could have been coincidence, but at the same time, it could have been a trigger to keep him from saying anything, because he knew, that.
He sounds like a perfect candidate, really, Freeman. I mean, if he was abused as a child and then in the military, there may well have been that going on.
Mm-hmm. And my granddad too. He's a longtime Freemason as well. So it came down. I broke the line. I'm the one that didn't join.
Although you have covered the Freemasons at length. I've seen you going about the temples, everything else. And of course, their symbology. It's all around us, everywhere today, everywhere you look.
Yeah, I almost take that as commonplace now, and I forget that that's still shocking to people. It's funny what starts to become normal for. But yeah, once you realize that there was this occult force. Now, so when you start to look into Freemasonry, a few people in the world know that Freemasonry founded America and had a great part in the creation of Great Britain. And France, but America was this Masonic dream. It was outlined by Masons for Masons, to the point that there are pentagrams in the street plans of Washington, D.C. The very fact that the capital is known as the District of Columbia, Columbia being this goddess of the West as they brought her over. Really tracking the goddess goes back to Minerva, Venus, Inanna, Semiramis, and you can track this goddess throughout to today with Columbia. You ask anyone in America, who is Columbia? And they won't know. Even though there's Columbia Broadcasting, there's Columbia University, Columbia River, Columbia, it's all over the place. And our capital is the District of Columbia. But no one questions this, right? I became the only expert on the goddess Columbia because there was no one else. But so as you start to look around you, what you need to learn is that Freemasonry is based off of Hebrew Kabbalism, ancient Hebrew mysticism, and they say this openly without doubt. So when we start to talk, it's the Jews. Well, every Mason temple you go into is going to have a Star of David. It's going to have a menorah. It's but it's also going to have a New Testament. It's also going to have an Ark of the Covenant, things of this nature. But they are absolutely practicing this Hebrew mysticism. So, you got a bunch of white guys that are not Jewish at all practicing Hebrew mysticism. So it really kind of muddies the water when you're trying to say, well, it's the Jews. Well, it could be the Masons, because they're practicing the same ritual magic and same type of stuff. But so you learn that our founding fathers would meet in dark lodges and perform death and resurrection rituals that are still practiced to today and still mostly held to that same rigid ritual. And this opens up all kinds of doors of what's happening. Why have these men been performing these rituals around this altar? You go to the House of the Temple, the Supreme Council of the 33rd, and their altar is this big Belgian black altar in the center. And these men meet in here with darkened rooms. You're putting these pajamas and a noose around your neck. You got a blindfold over your eyes, and you've been kind of somewhat trained into what's going to happen, but not really. And you're led into this lodge of men on a sword point. So with this threat that if you give away any of these secrets, you will die, or even if you mess up, you'll die. And so as you go through this ritual, there are different things that occur. You circle the altar like my witch stepmother, I guess you would call her. You would circle the altar. Now, something like circling the altar has symbols. They have symbols to signify this. And when you start to study masonry, you deal with a lot of math because you're dealing with, stone masonry as a symbol. Now, there's very few masons out there, Freemasons, that actually work with stone and that actually build anything, right? This is speculative. This is magic. This is well, anyway, they don't build stuff, right? But they're signs and symbols, and the things that they allude to God do use the math and the symbols of mathematics. So circling the altar like that actually has a symbol, which is a square with another square on top of it and a square sitting next to it, making a right triangle inside of the three squares sitting on top of each other. You may have seen this. And then those three squares are compared to Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And so the canted square is Horus in this illusion, which relates to the circling of the altar because of the mathematics of the circle. And so the canted square, this is something like just such a simple sign, but look at like Enron and their canted E. And you start to look around at the canted squares and you realize that these actually mean something to a brotherhood. And then you start to look around and you go, oh my God, Starbucks fits in this ritual. ABC fits in this ritual. McDonald's fits this ritual. And as you start to realize every corporation actually, their corporate logo could be deciphered in a Masonic theme. And then you find absolutely that Ray Kroc or Roy Kroc of McDonald's is a Freemason. You go and find that. I have them all documented as I went through all the different temples. Okay, here's Colonel Sanders. Here's McDonald's. Here's Pepsi. Here's Hollywood. Here's the military-industrial complex. And so it's not just to say that these corporate logos could be alluded to in Freemasonic ritual. I've gone and proven the fact that the men were Freemasons and that they absolutely are. So we're dealing with this fascist situation because that means that America itself is a corporation, which is a magic creation of its own right. Just to write a contract is a magical act. When you look into the first forms of magic, you've got language, you've got contracts, and talismans. And here you have all of this going into making a corporation. And so a corporation's really a golem. It's a magical creature that doesn't die, and it just eats everything in its presence. And that's really what our world is formed on. And so you realize, oh, wait, America's fascist.
America's more than fascist, The question,
Oh, yeah.
Do you think like the 33rd degree Mason, do you think that has anything to do with like ley lines of the earth at all? Is there like, like the 33rd parallel? Is there any sort of similarity or connection there in the degrees to that?
Yeah, I haven't found any.
Okay.
It's very possible, but I haven't seen anything. And one of the best people to look into for that type of information, there's Le Plongeon. I would highly recommend reading some Le Plongeon. And I'll have to think of the other guy. I have a huge shelf of all
Freeman,
this.
I've always kind of looked at it this way, and Dr. Harry Wiener, he's put it in the chat as well, that the 33 kind of levels, it's almost like the 33 vertebrae before they fused in the tailbone. And it's if you're working your way up to that enlightenment of the top and reaching the dome, so to speak, the brain level.
Yeah. I was going to mention that. But yeah, you are correct. And that would probably be. Now, realize that for any Freemason, there's only 3 degrees. And so once you're a master mason, so you go in as an entered apprentice, that's the 1st degree, and then you're a fellow craft, 2nd degree, and then you're a master, 3rd degree. But what happened was that the Scottish Rite formed itself as the Grand Council of Freemasonry, and then this gentleman, used the term loosely, Albert Pike, came in and reorganized the rituals. Now, there were more than 33 rituals, and more than that in degrees, but then it got just cut down to these particular 33, and it was really Albert Pike that organized that whole system.
Wow, there you go. Now we're almost going out to break, guys. I've been blown away here. I mean, I hogged the first part of that show. Where can we go after the break, guys? I mean, we've got mind control, we can go UFOs, we can go cloning, Egypt. Joe, it's
the question. I saw a question in the chat room about Jedi. So I don't know how to go about that, but who are the Jedi was the question.
Yeah, and Michael Sarian has them connected to the Jedi.
Yes, that's what I meant. The Jedi, yes.
Yeah, which goes to the reptilians again, and you're back to the reptilians. But what you should know about the Jedi and the Star Wars theme is that it is all bloodline. That's something that people don't really catch on. You have this parasite, the midichlorians, existing inside of your blood, and it's those parasites that give you the Force. And this, I think, actually feeds better into the storyline that we're trying to figure out on planet Earth right now.
Yeah, we got a parasite that's in our blood just now, but it's not giving you any force. It's sucking the life force from you, and it's called the royal family.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll say.
Might be
even
Freaky Friday, but
even
we have
Prince
to bring
Andrew. Hey, even Prince Andrew sucked the life force out of the Queen, and she fainted. I heard.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones, obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome back to the show, folks. Of course, it's Freaky Friday, and you're joined by myself, Marty, from the KBS crew, Johnny Whistles, Kev Baker, Joe Joseph, John King, and of course, Freeman Fly from Freeman TV. Now, I think we're going to be shifting gears here. I wanted to ask Freeman about his latest talks, which is dubbed Aliens from Hell, and get into that and see what it's about. So, if you wouldn't mind, Freeman.
No, absolutely. I've been trying to track the occult aspects of technology and, again, correlate this with our ancient past and what they're telling us in our modern times. So I really began with the idea of Battlestar Galactica. And if people realize that Battlestar Galactica is actually a Mormon creation myth, and that they continually say this happened before and it will happen again. And you really got to wonder as you look into this series that whether or not that's true, because what they're showing is that humanity is going to move into this robotic phase and this AI phase and the idea of mind transfer technologies. And I personally think it's inevitable.
Oh, definitely, Freeman. I mean, we're even seeing, sorry, Marty, but we're seeing people like Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, two of the biggest kind of hitters in the scientific world, and they're talking about the actual dangers of artificial intelligence and what it could bring with it.
Yeah, Elon Musk called it a demon. But, of course, he's sending robotic rocket ships up to the International Space Station now. So,
although he did have a failed landing attempt there not long ago.
Yeah, but they got the contract. I knew they would. This was something that I tracked for some time. I was watching the space war situation from the time that we bombed the moon. If you guys remember us bombing the moon, we crashed the Lacrosse satellite into the moon to see if this dust plume would give us any idea of whether or not there had been water on the moon, which was just crazy because we had already, or Japan had already done this survey. India had already done this survey. Japan already crashed a satellite into the moon. We had the data already. So the Lacrosse mission, the millions of dollars that we used to crash that rocket into the moon, was really pointless, and unless there was another agenda going on. And as I looked into this situation, we really got to wonder about our moon. I mean, a couple of Masons wrote a book called Who Built the Moon, because it was so phenomenal in the way that it sits and where it's at, how it is a perfect eclipse and all of the things that go into the strangeness of our moon. And
sorry, I was going to say, even the size of the moon compared to other planets' moons, theirs is enormous.
Yeah, it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be doing what it's doing. It shouldn't only show us one side. It's and all of these things. So there's a whole book on that, on who built the moon. But when I saw that we were bombing the moon, that I immediately thought of our current technologies, which HARP. Many people don't realize HARP has the capability of tomography. So when you saw Jurassic Park and they hit the ground, they struck the ground to vibrate so that they could see the dinosaur bones in the earth, you could do the exact same thing with HARP by striking the moon and be able to see inside of the moon. And so that was my running theory on why we struck the moon.
Are they looking to mine it, Freeman, or can I go total woo here? Are we looking for some kind of ancient bases, something like that underneath?
That would be my thought and theory on the whole situation, that they're finding that we have been interplanetary in our ancient past and are quickly trying to seek answers to these puzzles.
What's your take? Was it us up there, or like ancient ancestors, or was it some other civilization maybe?
That's a tough one, and I think we're starting to learn that we're at the apex of our understanding. Like, I keep trying to reach out a little further and see what we understand about our ancient past and what we can learn. And there is a galactic history that has been forming along the way. Some of it goes a bit too bizarre for me, that there was like an extraterrestrial race associated with every living being on Earth. That's crazy, like cat people, dog people, you know what I mean?
I think the one I go for was probably 57 varieties. That's probably about right.
Heinz.
Well, when you start to look into Sitchin and you start to look into the Sumerian tales and this idea of Enki and Enlil and Ishtar and all of them battling over the gold mines of planet Earth, this starts to make a lot of sense. Now, what's curious is in the ancient past, there's a consistency to the concept that there were reptilian people and there were fish people. And this is consistent over and over again. So to the point that in ancient Egypt, when they talk of their creation myth, the world is created by the Ogdoad, or what is known as the Eight. And these eight are 4 reptilian creatures with snake heads and 4 fish people that came in unity to create life on planet Earth. Now, when we start to look at ourselves in relationship with other evolutionary thoughts, then, if we came from monkeys, then somewhere along the way, amphibians were introduced into this situation because, well, monkeys don't swim. Monkeys don't have webbed fingers. Monkeys don't have hair that flows with water like humans do. Monkeys sink, they don't swim. So if we come from monkeys, somewhere in the midst, there was amphibian in the human trait. But this whole reptilian merfolk theme just carries on over and over throughout time, even to the point now at the Philosophical Research Society. Manly P. Hall is one of the most renowned Freemasons of esoterica, and the Masons revere him as someone who had very deep knowledge, more knowledge of their rituals than any of the other Masons had ever understood. Yet he wasn't a Mason. He was made an honorary Mason because of the knowledge he had. But he formed the Philosophical Research Society in California. And on his library doors, which is actually the background of my website, he has a merfolk and a reptilian carved into the door, and they're being worshipped by what seem to be Asians. Just by the clothing that they're wearing, they appear to be Asian. But one is Confucius and the other is Plato. And so Confucius is the merfolk, and he's holding a staff that looks like a penis. And then Plato is the reptilian. He has slit reptilian eyes. They're carved that way. It's not any play of light or anything. It's meant to be. And he's holding a pine cone, which is the pineal gland. So you have this generation type idea, but you've also got the two concepts of man, which is the material and the spiritual. So that's the Plato-Confucius connections there. So this whole storyline just keeps playing out seemingly in our own genetics. And it does go back to this ancient past. So what if there was a reptilian race, as some have said, that came through Alpha Draconis, which no one knows where they came before that, and they came to dominate Earth but could not defeat the technological superior Syrians, who were merfolk or fish people, because Enki of the Sumerian race is always known as Lord of the Water, one who lives in water, one whose abode is in water. And he's always drawn with fishes, and you always see these merfolk, over and over again. So they formed a union, and this gave us that divine right to rule, and it established the concept of the marriage of kingdoms. And then that just plays out over and over again to where you got Great Britain and England with their dragon and their reptilian forces. And really over here in America, we have more of the merfolk symbolism with Columbia. And we have a lot more fish people and fish beings situated over here.
Yeah, some would say, when you look back at the talks, of a possible reptilian race, that could have visited Earth and maybe created us as some sort of slave race. There was talks of man being created in a clay vessel, almost like cloning, I maybe a bit, just a theory there, but, there's been a lot of talk of that, hasn't there, over the years with the likes of Zachariah Stitchin and many other people.
Definitely, and
don't know.
You realize that cloning is not that difficult. It's the very first clone to be made was of a frog, and it was made by taking a strand of a baby's hair and splitting the cell in half with a baby's hair, and then generating the two cells into life. So, that's how simple the very first clone was. A guy made his own glass tools. He created all his own tools to do this and generated the first clone. Now, by the time we got to Dolly and the guys there at Roslyn, right? Roslyn Chapel right there, that's all based in this holy blood grain and the Merovingians, back to the merfolk again. But Roslyn, when they I lost his name right now, the guy who cloned Dolly, he did not expect any attention from this whatsoever. He was actually trying to create a sheep that was capable of producing pharmaceuticals in its milk, right? And they had already been cloning cows for a while. Dolly wasn't the first mammal to be cloned. They were cloning cows already. They don't want you to know how much cloned meat you've eaten already, right? Yeah, like, no, we're not putting that on the label. They've been cloning cows forever and ever, and it's a money market for cloners. It's, if you can get a $40,000 cow and just keep cloning it. But so when they made Dolly, they didn't expect any attention out of it. All of a sudden, they find themselves on the cover of Time magazine, and they didn't even keep like records of where the udder cell came from, Dolly's original part. They didn't, they didn't care. It didn't matter. They were just trying to clone and trying to make a sheep that would produce pharmaceuticals. Now we have glow-in-the-dark cats and bunny rabbits, pigs, glow-in-the-dark pigs.
Spider goats.
So do you think that it is quite possible then? That, I'm not saying a reptilian race per se, but some sort of, some sort of race, maybe even human in form, coming from another civilization, another star system, and then coming here, taking on the dinosaurs, and here we are.
Marty, just adding on to that, but I mean, if this fish people and the reptiles, and then you've got us, maybe that's like the three kind of types that you can use to populate the different planets that are habitable throughout the universe.
Let me ask this real quick. What if they were gene splicing and doing things like that and caused these races to come about, if you will. You know what I mean? It's something along those lines, because if you look like biblically pre-flood, that's what they say, you know, like the idea of this griffin, it didn't come out of anywhere. Those creatures existed.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if there wasn't some sort of ancient alien, spiritual, interdimensional beings that weren't doing that. I look at the Great Pyramid. How the hell did human beings build that? Get out of here.
Now,
You know?
I went to university, Kansas University, to study ancient architecture, and
Yeah.
I had a university professor tell me that we cannot build the Great Pyramid in the 21st century. There are only 3 cranes in the world that can lift some of the stones that were used, not all of them, and it would take 3 weeks to move each stone. There's over 2 million stones in the Great Pyramid alone. It would take, you know, decades upon decades, and we couldn't do it anyway, if, you know, because there's stones that are too big. Then you go to Baalbek, Lebanon, and you're like, well, there's no way. This thing's a train, you know. So part of my thoughts also bring in Velikovsky and Worlds in Collision. This is a very interesting study. He got a lot of ridicule, but the science he worked on was very sound. Velikovsky's work is really interesting, and it explains the story of Lucifer and how Lucifer is Venus, because that's always been very confusing when people look. Now, that also, you should realize that means Columbia is Lucifer as well. Look it up in the dictionary. Look Venus up or Lucifer up in the dictionary, and they're one and the same. So Lucifer being Venus is a Velikovsky idea, where Venus was actually a comet that got pulled into our solar system, caused a cataclysm by striking planet Earth, flew off to fall into the orbit and become Venus. But in the aftermath of this collision, I have my own personal extrapolations from Velikovsky's theories. So Earth, when you look at Earth, you see that there is a massive chunk of Earth missing. That is the Pacific Basin. So if the ocean and the moon, if the moon wasn't positioned so perfectly to keep the Earth looking round, then we would see this massive hole in Earth. You know, it's just the ocean covers it up. But what you have is this comet coming in, striking this planet, breaking it into pieces, which forms the asteroid belt, and actually jumps these 2 planets, Mars and Earth, out of their orbits into a new orbital path. So around the sun, the orbital waves are very much like a record. And you, like a record would skip if you hit it, you can do the same thing with planets, but they'll fall into the same groove. And so my personal theory from Velikovsky's work is that Earth was closer to the sun at this time, and Mars is where Earth is now. And when they got struck like pool balls, they got shifted a groove in the record of the gravitational wave, and that decimated Mars. Mars, I believe, had white people living on it. When we start to look at all of the strange Martian structures, the pyramids, the weird things on there, and the face on Mars, then you start to really believe that that white people were there. Because white people are really bizarre, okay? You know, you watch something like Gladiator, the movie, to give you an impression of what white people would look like to a captured African. Like, you know, they built this Colosseum. It goes to the heavens, you know, and Africans like, I got my mud hut. You know, I don't know nothing about this, you know. And so white people are really strange in that way. And the black people have really, to this day, even remained more tribal and more...
They're more connected to the planet almost.
Absolutely, because they would be the natural earthlings. Right?
Yeah.
And the Martians might be even a freak outer culture from some other planet. But either way, well, you know, white people are really strange in my work, you know, being
Have you
one.
ever looked into the work of Michael Tellinger down in South Africa?
Yeah, Adam's calendar and such.
Yeah, very interesting. I do think, I mean, I would totally go along with the Anunnaki or some other race coming here.
Okay,
Finding the indigenous black people, cloning them, tweaking them, whatever, And then when just before they leave, they create the white race almost to look over them.
Yeah. Do you know, it's there's some old text that goes back, and it was said that the Stone Age black people came to worship the white gods that descended from the skies. So what does that sound like?
Yeah, and you think about the Incans who were venerating bearded white men as their gods when they themselves never grew facial hair. How did they know? How did they know about beards? And that's how the Spaniards came aboard and were just like, hey, we're your gods, because there were bearded men on horseback. And so how did they know about beards, right? Because they don't grow facial hair.
Yeah, it's, there was some tests done. I can't remember where I've seen the research. Hopefully somebody can find it and put it in the chat. And it was tests done regards to people, how long they can live underwater, you know, how long they can breathe for, all sorts of scientific studies done on the body and stuff. And they actually found that with the black population, it was more attuned to the earth. And when they looked at the white people, it was like so many seconds difference, you know, and different results and stuff. And
that's absolutely correct. We're on a Martian cycle. We're on,
yeah, exactly. Is that something you've heard before? Because I can't recall exactly the correct.
Absolutely, you know. Absolutely, yes. Human or white people are on a Martian cycle. If we were left in a deprivation tank, we would fall into Martian circadian rhythms. So, yeah. I mean, the evidence is coming. It's just a matter of believing what we're seeing.
And that's into all the ancient Egypt stuff, you know, the cryptography where you see things that look like helicopters and flying spaceships and stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
It is, now, you know, they just had very high technology, you know, and then just came and invaded the Earth.
Right. And you go back to the Battlestar Galactica theory and the Mormon creation myth, and it would set that very stage, and realize that Mormonism is Freemasonry. It is just another face of Freemasonry. Joseph Smith, who founded Mormonism, was a Freemason charlatan in the East, who then, you know, was able to go off and read magic tablets in his magic hat and fool everybody into following his religion. But now when you see these Mormon temples around the globe, they really look alien, man. And especially in Ogden, Utah, where all of the west side of America's taxes are done, the Mormons there, they've got really a crazy, really, I mean, it looks like a space, you know, it's just crazy. But one point that you had brought up with Michael Tellinger and the calendar idea, I wanted to strike on real quick. And that is that they put a ton of effort into looking into long periods of time. And they built structures that would last millennia to keep this knowledge alive. So what was so important that we needed to look 56,000 years in the future, say, and have these established structures that, like, even the Native Americans had one in Chaco Canyon, but when you look to the Mayans and how they had astronomically aligned their buildings to highlight all of these astrological and astronomical events, this is something that I think is really curious, and that it shows us that these secret societies that have been holding this information throughout all these times. Now, all the Mayans that I was with the Mayans back in 2009 for their first ever all-night ritual at the pyramids of Tikal. And you can see all the pictures and film and stuff on Freeman TV. But they were all Masons as well. Like, it's really a trip when you start to see this puzzle. Just like, wow, all the astronauts, they were Masons. And
well, Freeman, when you were talking about the pyramids, it's really hard to see why the Egyptians wouldn't have any record of how they actually built them or what they were even for. That tells me that they were there before the Egyptians. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And to me, when I start to look at these structures, you look at, say, Graham Hancock's work of Fingerprints of the Gods, and you look at the diagrams of these structures, and even more so the ones in South and Central America, but a lot, even the Egyptian ones, they look like computer parts. They look like the Earth is a motherboard. And then you realize, when you start to realize what your computer is, you realize that your megahertz, the speed of your computer, is due to the vibration of the quartz crystal in it. It's all filled with subterranean gases and gold, silicon, mica. And all of these very same ingredients are in all of these ancient temples that are built for purposes that we don't understand. So the pyramid being actually a ratio of the Earth's diameter is a planetary-sized technology that we haven't even considered yet. And we can see that it has subterranean tubes going down, going into getting the subterranean gases. We have the quartz crystals connection. We have all the parts and pieces of this technology, of computer technology, in our ancient structures, to the point that in, I think it was Chichen Itza, there was even a layer of mica under the stone flooring. Now, we can't move a sheet of mica that big right now. It's something that we it's too fragile. And they had moved this from wherever they had mined it all the way to this temple up on a mountain. And now let's remember that these people built these astronomically aligned temples with perfect configuration and perfect squares with no written language, right?
Right.
And built them in the most horrific place to live, right? Not where the food grows, but in this rocky, it's like, why? But when you start to take it in as global size technology, then it all really starts to make sense.
Yeah, John King, you wanted to add something. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, why wouldn't advanced people that can travel here in ships build structures out of simple stone and not create factories to build their advanced technology? Where is the evidence of their technology that they may have left behind? So we're digging up all these bones and digging up half of the Middle East looking for answers. Where is the laser pistol?
Right, exactly, and the drills and this. Yeah. Now, a curious note on that level is Coral Castle down in Homestead, Florida. I have a lot of pictures of Coral Castle on my website as well, because here is a place where a man built a structure out of up to 9-ton blocks. A little 4'11" man created this entire castle out of multi-ton blocks all by himself.
And Freeman, I think we'll just leave it there. We'll just tease the audience with that one. There's no bumper music for some reason tonight, folks. We can't hear it at this end. But Popeye of federaljack.com, he's going to be joining us just after the break. Stay tuned for that. We've still got 2 hours to go here, folks. This has been the freakiest Friday ever, and we're just warming up. Stay tuned.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome back to the show, folks. It is Freaky Friday, and before the break we were getting into some fascinating stuff along the lines of ancient technology, Egypt, and further afield with Freeman from Freeman TV. But first of all, Freeman, I want to say absolutely amazing stuff. I really like your website as well that you've put together there. I noticed you posted the link in the chat, freemantv.com. All kinds of fascinating pictures, I believe, that you've took as well on various expeditions and, journeys and stuff. So guys, go and check that stuff out there. And Freeman, I think you had wanted to just plug some of your recent stuff before we move back to Coral Castle.
Yeah, sure. Let's get it out there. Over the years, I've tried to produce something new every year so that new concepts, new theories, thoughts, and ideas. But really, there is no such thing as an old show on Freeman TV because it's seriously moving into the future. And I'm still waiting for the news to catch up with the thoughts and theories that we've been putting out for all these years. So I have 7 DVDs out now and 2 books that we're really excited about. Weird Stuff. It's called Weird Stuff, Operation Culture Creation. And what we've done with these is design these 2 books as a tool for people to share this knowledge with their friends. Because one thing that we hear as we travel around everywhere is, I don't have anyone to talk to about this stuff. And so we wanted to open that door. So weird stuff really starts right on the ground floor. There's something that everyone can understand in it. I know I'm going over the Freaky Friday today, but weird stuff starts at the beginning. But believe me, it's all weird stuff for sure, you know? And everyone that opens weird stuff loves it. It's just a great tool for you to share. So right now I'm giving away Aliens from Hell. You can watch online for free if you buy Weird Stuff Part 1 and 2. So that's on the front page of Freeman TV if you want to check that out. But just, yeah, really, I mean, that's, you know, we got the 7 DVDs, a flash drive, the bumper sticker, and these books. And we have a new book coming out very soon called Celebrity Mind Control, because this is a hot topic. It's a huge one. I don't know if you guys have heard all of these different people coming forward saying their spouses are CIA assassins, and how this is all playing in from the Hollywood scene. But so we are covering in depth the CIA connections, the mind control connections in Hollywood, and then how that mind controls us. So you'd be looking forward to that coming out really soon. Oh, and the last thing I should mention is that Free Your Mind 3 is going to be fantastic. The last one in Philadelphia was so hot. It was awesome. It was amazing. I was blown away by every talk, and every single person seemed to unify the other talks. It was an epic adventure. So if you go to freeyourmindconference.com and put in Freeman as a coupon code, you will get $15 off your tickets. And I highly recommend it. It was such an event last year, and the last couple of years, that I'm really looking forward to that.
Excellent stuff. So you folks go and check him out at freemantv.com. So before the break, we were getting into Coral Castle. What's going on there?
Yeah, that's a truly bizarre scenario. And Edley Scowlin, that little man I was talking about that is reputed to have built this place, said, or he built the place, right? He said that he knew the mysteries of the ancient Egyptians and the methods that they used to build the pyramids. And he has an entire theory, which he never fully outlined before he died, that he could move magnetism into things. And there's this bizarre device that's still on display at Coral Castle that is folded magnets on this wheel, like a big pinwheel thing, or, like on a car, a rotor. Anyway, this big magnetic device that supposedly was able to put magnetism into the stones so that then they just floated into place. Now, there is a 9-ton gate at Coral Castle that sat on 2 pivots, and you could just push this 9 tons with your finger and it would just rotate. That gate broke and fell off, and they spent so much money and so much time. Actually, Masons now own Coral Castle. A couple of Masons do. They spent so much money and time trying to put that 9-ton block back in its place. They could never get it to work again. With all their technology, they had no idea, no way, didn't know how to put it back and make it work. So to this day, that 9-ton gate no longer rotates.
Wow, that's I find really fascinating. How some of the stuff that we've stumbled upon, from the past. We can't even do today, with our technology, and look how advanced we seem to be,
Exactly. And magnetism and magic have always gone hand in hand. Got your magic, your Magnus, your magi, your magnets. It's always been part of this magical story.
And Freeman, before we just move along, I believe Johnny King, you just watched something just recently, did you not, on Coral Castle, and they put forward their theory on how it was done, did they not?
Yes, they did. They explained that he did it with levers and various other simple tools.
Do you think that's the case, John? Did you think that was a pretty good explanation they gave?
Well, they showed some guy, probably 150 pounds, moving a 3-ton block across the yard.
See, I actually think, I mean, I'll get Freeman's take on this and the rest of the guys, but I always thought that possibly some kind of sonic technology, the use of sound waves, Freeman, almost to negate the weight of things, and that would make them almost weightless. What do you think of that?
I think that sound definitely has a huge role in all of this, but I can only go on what Ed himself was saying. But he would have had to have some sort of mechanism to introduce that sound. But we can definitely see this in the theory of cymatics and how much the universe is created by sound. So. The pyramid itself could be working on sound vibrations, because when you look to the king's chamber where supposedly the sarcophagus would sit, there is a relieving chamber above this that no one really knows why it was put in there. But strangely, it's tuned to the note F sharp. And so some of the block is polished, some left rough. And it actually vibrates at the frequency of F sharp. Now, I thought this was really interesting when I went to research the Georgia Guidestones, because when you look at the Georgia Guidestones, you'll also find that there are pieces of it that are polished and other that are rough. I didn't have any technology to be able to see what frequency the Guidestones were transmitting at, but there's definitely something to all that.
Yeah, so it's as if there could be one big harmonic tune going on right now. The whole Earth, in tune with the other planets and the universe and stuff. They do say, don't they, that the other planets have their own sort of tone and frequency that they emit. Like a pulse almost.
And
yes.
We've got our Schumann frequency going on. And of course, before we go any further, folks, before I forget, we've been joined by our good friend, co-host on the network, Mr. Popeye of federaljack.com. And Popeye, I believe you're actually a friend of Freeman's.
Hey,
Yes.
Popeye.
Freeman, long time no speak, brother. How have you been?
Yeah, pretty good.
I'm glad to be able to hang out with you and pick your brain again, dude. Freeman, guys, is a huge warehouse of knowledge. You just want to plug into his brain and suck all the information out.
Well, we're just getting warmed up, Popeye. We kind of got his background. We've had a bit of aliens from hell.
Yeah, Aliens from Hell.
We're
That's
going
pretty
all
good.
kind of...
Yeah, we haven't even gotten there yet, just so you know.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yes. I mean, it's
Wait till you get to the clones.
No, we did a little bit of clones. We did some clones.
No, Joe, you haven't.
No, I know. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Surface.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
Honestly, to me, that was one of the most bizarre events in my entire career. Because let's just throw it out there. Let's get the elephant in the room.
Okay, please.
I've been talking about cloning of mummies since the early or late 80s.
Right.
Okay. So there was a research study that came out. It came out in Nature magazine. It was published in New York Times that they had cloned a cell from a mummy.
Which one? Nimrod?
No. Nimrod's never been found. But no, it was actually a mummy from the period of Akhenaten, the 18th dynasty. So about 2,500 years. And they were able to clone a cell. And this was a huge breakthrough and a bizarre mystery. And that's how it came across my radar, because a viable cell for cloning should not be in existence after this long of deterioration. But there's a mystery to mummification that actually saves viable cells for millennia so that these pharaohs can actually be brought back. Now, the pharaohs themselves had a belief system that they would return in 3,000 years. So I began talking about this right off the bat, like, this is real. We can clone mummies. It's been done. It was in Nature magazine. That's not some shisty magazine. That's a peer-reviewed, that's, illustrious magazine. We're not playing around. So on my third television show of the Freeman Perspective, I did the Return of the Nephilim. And I brought up this whole thought and theory that we can clone mummies. So this is 2006. So I didn't think that this was going to go much further. But then, of course, 2 years later, lo and behold, here comes Barack Hussein Obama, who just happens to look identical to Akhenaten.
Get out of here. Now, see, that makes eerily perfect sense. Damn.
Joe, have you
it's
seen
gonna
the
get weirder.
photographs that Freeman's actually put together? I'm going to drop them in the chat for people.
Wow.
But if you haven't seen this, it's beyond belief.
It's crazy bizarre. It's something you absolutely have to see to believe. So just search Obama clone of a pharaoh or anything like that. Obama clone, that'll get you there. And you will see that they are identical. And I'm going to just put my honor in your hands and tell you that I did not manipulate those images whatsoever. I did not shrink his face. I did not squish anything. I simply cut them in half. So if you go to my website right now and you go to the Obama Akhenaten page, and I provide for you yet another mystery. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll give you the opportunity to do this for yourself so that you can see for yourself that this is all true. So when I split the face of Akhenaten, other people had made this had noticed this as well. So there was William Henry. He had noticed the similarity as well, but he hadn't taken the Photoshop skills that I had to be able to split it and go, oh my God, these guys are identical. You can't even tell, other than the facial discolor. But anyway, so I put these faces together, and for me, it was just kind of a running thing, wow, is he a clone of Akhenaten? Well, then I said, as I was tracking the plan of our evil overlords, there was the theory that was brought to us by the Nazi Werner von Braun, and through his secretary, Carol Rosen, who I believe doesn't like me much, and it's probably because I've connected this all to Akhenaten. But Carol Rosen came forward from Werner von Braun. Now, Werner von Braun was the Nazi scientist who brought rocketry to America and also starred with Walt Disney in the Walt Disney Show, right? He was a very popular Nazi in America, and he got us to the moon. But so Werner von Braun said that there were universes, not just a universe, and that the evil overlords trying to take over our planet we're going to use the Red Scare, or the fear of communism, followed by terrorism, followed by an asteroid threat, followed by the alien invasion. And these would be the false flags that they would use to push the New World Order. This is what the Nazi Werner von Braun was telling his secretary, Carol Rosen, who then told all of us. Now, so I did a picture of Barack Obama as Akhenaten, and because I knew the next part of the plan was asteroids, we'd already done terrorism, I put an asteroid in the artwork hurtling towards down Barack Obama's face. And lo and behold, if right after I put that artwork out in the world, they announced, oh my God, there's an asteroid hurtling towards planet Earth. It's going to destroy all life in 2026 or 2036. Depending on how close it comes by in 2013, we will know, right? So this was way back when. But no one, they announced that this asteroid's name was Apophis. So now what is shocking about this, and what just threw me, I'm just like, oh my God, can you guys believe this? Apophis is the Satan of Akhenaten's religion. So now I've got Obama in an artwork with an asteroid is symbolizing his very Satan, and I did it all before it was ever announced to the public that Apophis was this major threat.
Whoa.
So then somebody writes me and they say, well, have you ever noticed that Michelle Obama looks quite a bit like Queen T? And I'm like, Queen T, who's that, right? And I knew a lot about Akhenaten, but I'd never actually learned about his mother. And Akhenaten's mother was a true mystery. She was in the pharaonic position from the time she was 4, but she was a Nubian, and this was strange, which makes her black. And it was weird that she was there, this outsider, this foreigner that was raised up in the pharaonic power. So Queen T was the true power behind the throne from Akhenaten's father, who was Amenhotep III. So Amenhotep III and Queen T are ruling. Amenhotep dies, which leaves Akhenaten in power. The two biggest colossal statues that you will see in Egypt are of Queen T and Amenhotep. And you'll see that the people are only as tall as their kneecaps. You know, that's probably just symbolic, but still, one of the largest structures of a facial person is Queen T and her husband. So she actually, you can go to my website, you can go to the Obama page, take the picture of Queen T, take the picture of Michelle Obama, put them on top of each other and cut one in half. And you will see for yourself without any manipulation that they are identical. Like the Akhenaten Obama connection blew me away, but the Queen T Michelle, you can't even tell I put Michelle's face on the picture. That's
unbelievable. It is.
Right?
I can't even believe it. This is the first time I've ever seen it.
Okay.
Holy crap.
See, aren't you glad I mentioned it? This is why
Wait a minute.
I was getting us here. Man.
Can I do this? Can I do this real quick? But wait, there's more.
There is more. We got three more faces to go. 3 more faces and more mysterious connections. All right. So I'm sitting there with my wife, Jamie, who is the true author of Weird Stuff, Operation Culture Creation. I just do all the art and all the manipulation and wrote a few. Anyway, she's sitting there with me and she's like, "You're not going to believe this." And I'm like, what? And she says, "Well, there's always 2 daughters depicted with Akhenaten, like with his wife." Now, remember, if this were true, Michelle would be Obama's mother, not his wife. All right, that's Queen T, Akhenaten's mother. The true wife would be Nefertiti, and he had 6 daughters with Nefertiti, but 2 are secondary wives and whatnot. But anyway, 2 of them were always depicted with Akhenaten, and this was what made Akhenaten so weird, right? So whenever you're dealing with an ancient astronaut story, you see Akhenaten. You're like, well, he's a cone head with big weird hips that came in and flipped Egypt on its head, ended their multitude of gods and started the worship of one god. To the point that even, I think it was Sigmund Freud believed that Akhenaten was Moses because he changed everything. And this conehead guy, right? So he's always the first go-to guy when it comes to ancient astronauts. But so here were these 2 daughters, and I'm like, oh my God, no way. So I go and I get the pictures of the busts, which I've now personally seen with my own 2 eyes. And I'll tell you this as well, the bust of Malaya, who was actually Aksunamon.
That's unfreaking believable, man. I can't even believe it. It's nuts.
She actually has pointy ears in the bust. Yeah. You can see it in my video. There's 2 busts of her. One of them has the rounded ears and one has pointy ears. I snuck some videotape. I wasn't allowed to film this. And of the Malaya head with the pointy Vulcan ears. They're identical. You know?
I know. I can't believe it.
Okay.
Wow.
So one more layer on this. So all of a sudden, the Secret Service announces that they have secret names for the first family that they're going to tell the whole world through the New York Times. Right? So you can still look at this up. It's still in the news. The Secret Service names for the first family. Barack Obama is known as Renegade. Akhenaten is known as the Renegade Pharaoh. You just Google Renegade Pharaoh and you'll see it's Akhenaten. And that's Barack Obama's secret name. Michelle Obama is Renaissance, which means to bring back to life, right? Rebirth, reborn, right? And then the daughters are known as Radiance and Rosebud. Okay, when you look at the picture of Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and the 2 daughters, you'll see that there are only 2 other things in this picture. And that is the god, the Aten, with its radiance, because it's the sun, and the daughters holding up the rosebuds to the hands coming down from the sun. Radiance and rosebud, right there in the... Okay, so then, this has been this huge mystery for all this time. Did we find Akhenaten's mummy? Now, for 120 years, this has been a debate. KV-55... There was a tomb numbered KV-55. They found a number of mummies in there that they called the elder lady, the younger lady, and this other one that they thought might be Akhenaten. Now, the first doctor to come in and look at Akhenaten. Now, what was weird was when they found the tomb, it had been desecrated but resealed. And when they got inside, all of the things that said Akhenaten's name had been scratched out. But they saw that Queen T's toilet was there, and the canopic jars of Malaya and Sasha were there, and all of the parts for Akhenaten were there, but none of the like flashy gold that we found from Akhenaten's son, who was King Tut. But so a doctor comes in, looks at the mummy, and says, "Oh, this is female because it's got these really wide hips."
So wait a minute, Freeman. That means Trayvon Martin is King Tut. Since Obama did say he was like his own son.
Oh, boy.
We need to get the Photoshop out.
But I'm still looking. I'm still looking for the rest of the family. There's still others like, okay,
so a whole new level.
So Akhenaten's body was never actually identified. And so even at the point that I was saying that I was certain Obama was a clone of Akhenaten, I couldn't prove it because the DNA had not yet been identified. Lo and behold, at that very moment, Zahi Hawass, who was the Giza secretary, who was in charge of capping the Great Pyramid with gold in Y2K, he suddenly announces, "We are building a massive DNA lab under the Giza Museum, the Cairo Museum, using the Discovery Channel's money. Thank you very much. And we are not going to allow any DNA samples to leave Cairo. We will do all of our work here, and no one can know until we are done." So all of a sudden on Discovery Channel, he holds up the DNA strand, and you can see clearly written on it, it says KV55. And they suddenly announce to the world, "We have Akhenaten's DNA." Now, let me tell you, I was following archaeological forums, and these people got in a serious uproar over this because this has been a debate for 100 plus years since the tomb was found. And now Zahi's just going to come out there and say, "Hey, look, it's I got the DNA and this is Akhenaten. There's no question." Well, there was a question. And when answered, Zahi said, "Well, it was a national security secret." Right?
Get out of here.
Yeah. All this is true. It's all news. It's all right there. You can go look it all up for yourself.
Wow.
And Freeman, there's even another layer to this as well, because if you look at Akhenaten...
come on, what are you doing to me, man?
There is, because if you look at Akhenaten, he was actually with somebody else, was he not? Was he not with Nefertiti?
That's absolutely correct. So one more face. Could it be possible? Now, let's think of the impossibility of comparing one family from 2,500 years ago to one family in the modern day. If you do this with any other family in the world, any family in the world from any time period, I'll shut up, right? But you can't. You can't have 5 matching faces that are one single family. These are not handpicked to fit. They are one family and one family. There's just no way. So take in the impossibility of all of that. Then realize there's one more, because when Obama gets elected, he comes out and lo and behold, here is Beyonce, and she's singing "At Last My Love Has Come," much to Etta James' dismay, because Etta James wrote that song, and she was like, "Why am I not up there singing this for the president when I suffered so much to become the celebrity that I am?" You got Beyonce up there, who also went to the pyramids with Zahi Hawass, dressed in a ritual garb and sung Ave Maria in the pyramids, after being thrown out by Zahi being called a very stupid person. This lady, Beyonce, is an exact match for Nefertiti. I again split the two faces again, and they are an exact match. And she is totally integrated with the Obama White House. Her and Jay-Z and the Obamas are very close. Michelle stands up for Beyonce all the time. You witness Oprah Winfrey just wooing at Beyonce. She called Beyonce the beloved mistress of the universe, which is actually an appellation of ISIS.
And we are almost out of time again, folks. The cloning of the Obamas, unbelievable, yet very, very believable all at the same time. Join
Let's
us
just throw
after
in-
the break, folks.
I'm still having a problem trying to devour.
You are listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Welcome back, everybody. Joe Joseph here. You're listening to Freaky Friday right here on Truth Frequency Radio, truthfrequencyradio.com. And if you're anything like me, you've just spent the last 3 minutes mopping your brain up off the floor and trying to ring it into your ear again.
Waste
so
of
that
time.
you
It'll
can-
be back there in a minute.
So you can process the next half hour of information before your brain leaks out onto the floor again. So with that said, where do we go from here, guys, is on the Egyptology side? Because this is just, you get a very, how do you argue against the pictorial evidence here? You know, the split face. Oh man. I mean, this is huge. This has huge spiritual consequences. It has just, and no one knows this crap. You know what I mean? This is unbelievable stuff.
And Egyptologists are huge sellouts. So
Sellouts, big time.
Good luck getting the truth from them. While we're on this, I want to throw this out to Freeman. Freeman, thoughts on the Sphinx? Because if you look at Obama's face, you know, you could the argument could be made. Well, it kind of looks like the Sphinx's face too. But thoughts on the Sphinx itself, the hollow chambers underneath.
Yeah, even Obama went to the pyramids with Zahi Hawass, and they found that cartouche, and Obama himself says, "Look, that looks like me. Look at the big ears," and it really did. You know, the Sphinx is a very curious structure, and obviously much older than anyone says. I would go with most of the current theories of it being about 50,000 years old, and you know, I'm a big fan of the Edgar Cayce work and his ideas on there being this library under the Sphinx's paw. And Edgar Cayce really plays into this puzzle because here's another piece of the puzzle. Okay, Edgar Cayce was known as the sleeping psychic, and he would channel people's illnesses psychically from anywhere in the world if he was in communication, or I don't even know if he had to be. But he could diagnose them better than any doctor. But while he was doing this, Edgar Cayce was a rigid Christian, and he started to get all this information through people's past lives in Atlantis. And he started to correlate all this data and the true history of Atlantis. Now, Atlantis always plays heavily into the Freemasonic story as well, and does not fall out of the spectrum. Atlantis is a big part of this story, which, again, Atlantis was known for its merfolk and its fish kings and such, which was Atlas, which, of course, is CERN's particle collider. But anyway.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So Edgar Cayce formed a group called the Association of Research and Enlightenment. Well, actually, a group formed around his works, and they began doing deep, heavy study into Atlantis, and they have paintings there at the ARE, the Association of Research and Enlightenment, of the pyramids next to water and things like that. And they have all the Atlantis papers, and everything Edgar Cayce had ever said is documented there and cataloged and all of this. Well, they absolutely believe in this ancient civilization hypothesis, and that, you know, civilization goes much, much further back than what we've been led to believe. And yet they are the ones that paid for Zahi Hawass's University of Pennsylvania degree in archaeology.
How interesting and convenient, might I add.
And I will say that he still gives presentations at the ARE to this day, even though he's been fired as the Giza secretary because he was receiving sexual favors and money bribes for archaeological digs. He was not a good man, and he was fired. And he was just chauvinistic pig as far as I could tell. But he has been this staunch supporter of the lever theory, like we were talking about Coral Castle, and that slaves built the pyramids using, logs and ropes and pulleys and such, which, you know, of course, where did they get the wood? All of these type of things. So he's one that has always been standing on the slave theory for the building of the pyramids, and yet his whole degree and his whole position was given to him by these Atlantean theorists, the Association of Research and Enlightenment, where he still gives lectures to this day. So, So I don't know if that answers a little bit of this. I did want to get to you as to why Akhenaten. Why would they bring him back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, really.
I mean,
What is the significance to Akhenaten more so than any of the other pharaohs? What gives him significance?
was he a failed pharaoh, like a failed president in Obama?
In a way, I mean, he is the most revered pharaoh of his day because he's the most known, other than King Tut, because of all the gold, which was his son. But because of the weird stuff that he did, the destroying of the multi-gods, bringing it to a monotheism, saying we will now only worship the sun as the god, and moving the capital from Thebes to Amarna, and depicting himself in the most realistic art style that Egypt had ever seen, and then showing himself with his children and holding his wife's hand in depictions of himself. This was never done before. He was, according to Manly P. Hall, okay, so The Secret Destiny of America, written by Manly P. Hall, which is all about the brotherhood of the quest. So for him, there's an invisible college of smart men, of these mystics that have been trying to bring about a positive new world order and have been battling all these years to bring this about. And in Manly P. Hall's opinion, and in chapter 2 of America's Secret Destiny, it's Akhenaten, the man born 2,000 years too soon. And they consider him the first diplomat, the first humanitarian, the first individual. And he's revered within the secret societies to the point that the Rosicrucians, they say that he founded their magical order, that the Rosicrucians were founded by Akhenaten. They have a shrine to Akhenaten at the Rosicrucian thing in California. I can't remember what city that's in now. But anyway, and every single Grand Lodge of Freemasonry, from Australia to London to New York, they all have a temple to Akhenaten. And curiously enough, in the Philadelphia Lodge, which we could all go visit if we go to Free Your Mind 3, this is Benjamin Franklin's lodge. This has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, one of the earliest lodges in Freemasonry in America, which also has a 1-ton door, which moves on a pivot in there. So you can see a correlation. They in there have a massive temple to Akhenaten. And in Freemasonry, there is the pentagram. Like I was saying, the street plans of DC were set up as a pentagram. When you go through your death and resurrection ritual as a Mason, you're raised on what's known as the 5 points of fellowship, and you're given the secret lost word now that you've been resurrected from the grave by the grip of the lion's paw. And you're told to look at this star, and you're told that star is Venus, which again is Lucifer. But within Freemasonry, that blazing pentagram is actually Sirius, the star, the dog star. And so in the room to Akhenaten, in each corner of the room is the blazing pentagram, and in the center is the Dogon's tribe symbol for Sirius, which is really mysterious to me.
Now, they're a fascinating group of people.
Who said that a group of fish people came and taught them their technology, right?
Oh, and their hieroglyphs. I mean, you're talking about things that we would talk about today, maybe quantum level stuff they're talking about.
Yeah. Now, another bizarre twist on all of this. When we began cloning, there were many think tanks that came together. Well, really, there was just one think tank that came together to say pros and cons to human cloning. And I'm trying to think of the think tank's name. It might come to me in a minute. But the irony of it was that when they brought this to the public's eye, the idea of human cloning, they said, well, you might see us being able to regenerate, say, an organ or skin or tissue for burn victims, or even maybe regenerate limbs. But what happens when we bring back Amenhotep? Amenhotep is Akhenaten. Okay, Akhenaten changed his name because he started worshiping a new god, the Aten, and so he took on the name Akhenaten. But he was Amenhotep IV, and and this was, I think it was the Massey Clinic. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of that. But the very first investigation of political correctness into human cloning mentioned what happens when we clone Akhenaten or Amenhotep. And this just blew my mind. It keeps going. And of course, I can't remember everything. So you got to go to freemantv.com and listen, because I've covered this for, 7 years now?
Well, Freeman, we did start on the aliens from hell topic. We got to here. Now, you also mentioned that kind of covering things like Hollywood mind control and stuff like that. And, one series that has just started just recently, it's blowing me away, really. It's 12 Monkeys. Now, it's obviously a remake of the film. And they have a time travel device in that. And this is basically a miniature CERN, and then the person who does the time traveling sits on something that can only be described as a version of the Montauk chair. And it's always fascinating how they hide things in plain sight. And I don't know if you've seen that, Freeman, but I think that's one that we're going to see a lot of things out in plain sight, like I said.
Yeah. How bizarre our world has gotten. I want to see that 12 Monkeys series. I'm very into
when it went to the actual time travel, but I mean, that's one of my favourite topics. And I was literally falling off the couch because I'm screaming at my long-suffering partner, look, it's a miniature CERN and he's on the Montauk chair. And if you know the kind of stuff we talk about, these directors are definitely in tune, or like you maybe suggest, they could be CIA.
Oh, there's so much CIA involvement. And when you watch something like Stargate, they say in the credits, we want to give special thanks to the United States forces, military forces, and a special thanks to Space Command. And most people don't realize that on Stargate, when they were watching the TV series, those were legitimate patches they were wearing, that was Space Command, that the United States has a United States Space Force. It's been in existence since, the 90s, and it's housed in Cheyenne Mountain, just like the movie. So absolutely, Space Command had everything to do with writing Stargate, and they even make jokes about it. They made a special episode where they were making a show about the show, and they love to play upon these very things. And absolutely, when you see this coming in, that's when you start to realize that there's so much more to our puzzle. And this brings me to
we're not going to the Stargate thing, are we?
Well,
they were all the administration.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think of that. Oh, my God, yeah. You know what? I didn't even do that. That was the Stargate fans that had no idea what they were looking at. So what happened? Okay, Stargate, the television series, came out in 1996. And when you look at the characters that are portrayed in Stargate, they are everyone involved in the Obama administration. I mean, Sarah Palin's in there, but still, she was in the timeline. Hillary Clinton is one of the characters. She looks just like, the lead blonde in the storyline. And the curious thing was that Obama was identical to the character known as Apophis, which again was the Satan of Akhenaten's religion and one of the lead bad guys in Stargate. And he looks just like Obama. I got that picture on my website as well. I forgot about that one.
Ben Bernanke's the one for me.
Yeah, right.
That nails it. That finishes it.
And this was 1996. And of course, now are we dealing with time travel? Did they know that they were going to clone these people in 2000? Whenever they got cloned, I guess, back in the day.
If we're going there then, Freeman, that begs the question about the association between Michael Jackson and Uri Geller. Because before Michael Jackson's death, it was said that they were going about buying up almost Egyptian-style stuff. And then when they were asked where Michael was putting all of this, they just kind of giggled and said he had a place for it. And I mean, I believe there's even a theory out there that Michael Jackson might have time-travelled back to Egypt.
Yep. That's another one that I've been tracking and one that I put out there. I'm sure you heard that from me.
It would have been, man. It would have been. Like I say, I've been brought up in Freeman Woo. Mm-hmm. You've taught me well.
Well, that was one where it went the other direction, right? Because the the timing for me was different. And when I look at it now, I'm like, well, why didn't I think Michael Jackson was a clone of this pharaoh? And it was because of the timing, the way that this thing fell together. So when we travel all the way back to the year 2000, we find that here's this strange man named Ra-El. Now, Ra means Lord in Egypt, and El means Lord in Hebrew. And Ra-El runs around with a Star of David interwoven with a swastika in gold on his neck while wearing a puffy white spacesuit. His name was Claude Virillion, and he said that he had been contacted by Yahweh in a flying saucer and that he was sent to build the embassy for the Elohim's return, and that the Elohim were our extraterrestrial gods that genetically crafted us utilizing human cloning. So Rael and his Israeli cult of 55,000 members at the time started funding cloning operations such as Clonaid. So in 2000, they had a congressional hearing on human cloning. And who was there but Bridget Bousselet, who looks like some sort of a witch from Clonaid. I forgot the other guy's name right now. And then Rael standing up there in his puffy white spacesuit with his gold Star of David and swastika around his neck, being the advocates for human cloning. I mean, this was obviously a social engineering campaign to make everybody look at human cloning as some sort of farce, as some sort of, this guy's in a puffy white spacesuit talking to Congress with a Star of David and swastika around his neck. This can't be real. And yet Clonaid claims that they've cloned hundreds of babies. At the time, it was just dozens. And they had cloned a dead baby in Japan, brought this baby back, and they had cloned a daughter for these lesbians in Florida. And they birthed Eve, was their first clone that they announced. So Uri Geller and Michael Jackson decide they don't want to die. I want to live forever. So you were saying Michael Jackson went out shopping with his blonde-haired, blue-eyed children, okay? Now, let's just realize how much of a transhumanist Michael Jackson was. When it comes to Paris and the other boy, I can't think of him. They both had birth mothers. They had what do you call it? Surrogate mothers. Yeah. Surrogate mothers, right? So they were implanted with an egg that was fertilized and gave birth to the baby, but they weren't the mother. And when it comes to Blanket, now they were saying that this was Michael Jackson's sperm that created the baby. But when it came to Blanket, no one knew the parentage of the egg and the cell and the sperm and the mother that gave birth. So that's three people involved in the birth of Blanket that no one even knows who gave birth to Blanket. And he's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. I mean, he's not Michael Jackson's kid, but he is, right? He gave birth. So Michael Jackson is into all of this type of stuff, and he decided, I want to live forever. So he went out, and when he had just given birth to Blanket, and they had that strange scene where he was hanging the baby over the balcony, and everybody's freaking out about that. Well, at that moment, he was being filmed for this documentary, and they went shopping with Michael Jackson. He's just spending millions. Just, give me 2 of those, 6 of these. And everything's 10 to 30,000 up to buying a replica of King Tut's golden sarcophagus. And so the documentarian looks at Michael and says, are you going to be buried in that? And Michael says, no, I'm going to live forever. Right. And so he starts running around with Uri Geller. Now, Uri Geller was the psychic who was an Israeli psychic known for bending keys. He was very famous in the time of remote viewing in Ingo Swann. He was involved in all of that military project of remote viewing. And Uri Geller was used by some of the aristocracy to channel the 9 Egyptian gods, which is known as the Ennead, the 9 gods of Egypt. And they would sit in this barn, like the Astors and This is all in a book called The Stargate Conspiracy. And Peter Levinda, actually, in Sinister Forces, covers this quite well. They gather together in these and channel these extraterrestrial gods. And Uri Geller was one of the channels. They went through a few because they would tend to melt down. Uri Geller finally came out and said that the gods that he was talking to were actually tricksters, and they were known as Spectre, and they were actually an artificial intelligence vehicle that was orbiting our planet. Well, that may sound strange when you realize that we have actually a robotic space plane orbiting the planet, which is our X-37B, which landed just recently. But for the last 2 years, we've had a robotic space plane orbiting the planet.
The Flying Twinkie.
Yeah,
they supposedly lost another one. Remember there was another one they sent up. Remember, it was like $1 billion that cost to make it, and it was all sophisticated. They launched it in like 2 minutes after launch. Oh, we lost it.
That was the HTV-2. Yeah, they lost that one a couple of times. That's the hypersonic technology vehicles that they can't seem to control. They launch them and they're like a crazy rocket gun.
They probably have a secret base floating around up there, Freeman. They just don't want anybody to talk about it. That's what Carol Rosin was referring to, by the way. She said they were going to weaponize space with the whole, rogue states, terrorism, asteroids, aliens.
Well, Popeye, talking about asteroids, I mean, Freeman mentioned this earlier as well. And if you look at one of the projects that NASA are launching this year, I believe, it's called OSIRIS-REx.
Right.
So that's King Osiris, and I think it's due to land on an asteroid in 2016. So some of the symbology that you see them playing out in the sky, it really makes you wonder what that is all about, Freeman.
Yeah. And, I was ahead of the curve when the Norway spiral happened. Now, we can start to expect some more of this type of weird shenanigans because they're going to kick CERN on, I think it's March, and it's going to be twice as powerful as it was when it was launched the first time. And the first time they launched CERN, now realize CERN's corporate logo is 666 with a hyperdimensional portal. The god of destruction stands outside it, Shiva. And its names, Atlas and Alice, go back to Atlantis or going through the wormhole. And CERN was at maximum power at the moment that the Norway spiral occurred. Now, before the Norway spiral, now what we're watching and looking at is Carol Rosin's theories that they're going to use these, asteroids and aliens, right? So once we got to this puzzle, they launched this thing in America called the Cloud of Care. I broadcast the launch live on Freeman TV, so everybody could watch them launch this CARE. CARE stood for the Charged Aerosol Release Experiment, and it was an aluminum oxide cloud that was dispersed at the height of the International Space Station, which was about 180 miles up. And they said they were testing noctilucent clouds. But it seemed to open a portal in the sky. And so the people in the East Coast of America that saw this weird portal open were like freaking out. And the news came out there and they say, and I've got this in my documentary, the very news report. They're saying, well, we have no knowledge of what this is. We've checked with all our experts. No one knows what it is. Even though you can watch the launch live on Freeman TV, no one knows what this is. It must be aliens, right? That's what the news said. And I'm like, this is part of the programming. They want us to, think about this. And then, boom, lo and behold, the Norway spiral happens. And this just happens. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, a big blue spiral opened up in the sky, looked like, there it is in the chat room, looked like a portal that opened into the other dimension. And it happened right over the iSCAT antenna array. Now, iSCAT is Norway's HARP. And iSCAT has the capabilities of intergalactic communication. So iSCAT was used to send a Doritos commercial to Ursa Major. All right? So, yeah.
We transmitted a film as well at one point into space, which wasn't such a good idea. The day after tomorrow?
That was in Cape Canaveral. That was the Deep Space Guide wave that they used in Cape Canaveral. Now, we have a number of these transmission devices like HARP that are capable of transmitting to another planet. Now, I was telling you before about when we bombed the moon. They can use, and they finally did admit that they used HAARP to perform tomography and see inside of the thing. All right, they used this deep space guide wave out of Cape Canaveral to send the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves, not even the original, simulcast to Alpha Centauri. Now, it took 4 years for The Day the Earth Stood Still to reach Alpha Centauri. So the Alpha Centaurians actually got to watch Keanu's amazing performance on December 21st, 2012. Right? And if you've seen the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, then you realize that it's all about how horrible humans are, and you better send a big nanotechnology robot over here to destroy us all before we come and destroy you. And I think that's the movie we should be sending out to the most closest inhabited galaxy to our own, right?
Oh, yeah, a nice calling card. It's almost like a menu we sent them. Come and eat us, get rid of us.
Predictive programming for aliens.
For aliens, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, guys,
it just tells them to stay away from the planet, dude, because the natives are a bit restless. That's all.
I think that's why they put the Van Allen radiation belt around us to keep us in,
to keep us in like a prison, Kev?
Yeah, until we graduate. We're still using nuclear weapons. We ain't getting out of here, folks. But I tell you what, we'll be back in a few moments. And then right after this show, don't go anywhere, because it's just going to get better and better, because Chris and Cherie Geo will be coming up live. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Welcome back, everybody. It is hour number 3 of Freaky Friday. We'll take it to the 10 o'clock hour Eastern, and then hand it off to the man, the myth, the legend, Phoenix, and Phoenix Rising. Actually, just an unbelievable night. We say it every week, Kev. It gets better and better each week.
Wait, did the schedule change again?
Did it?
I thought Chris and Cherie.
Oh, no, it's Chris and it's Chris and Cherie. Duh. Sorry.
Ah.
You know how
what's going on now?
What happens is I randomly switch the schedule to make sure I test the geos to see if they're actually paying attention and listening in. And he was listening.
Joe's had a few too many beers before Freaky Friday, and he forgot the schedule.
Yash.
And he
no,
was
it's a test.
Show.
This is a test of the geo listening system. Yes, this is only a test. And of course, I got 9:01 p.m. You bastard from Chris Geo. So thank you very much.
Well done, Joe. Well done.
Yes, thank you. Of course, our guest is Freeman. FreemanTV.com. Go there today. Check out all the great, wow, just a treasure trove of information. Kev, the pictures are one thing, but all the videos and everything else, just unbelievable, isn't it? Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what
making coffee.
That's what I say. Yeah, brewing coffee. So where do we go? Where do we go from here? Popeye?
MK Ultra. We could stay on Secret Space, and I know Kev wanted to go to MK Ultra. We could stay on Secret Space for a few minutes because there is a plethora of things, and then we could go into the whole mind control stuff. And by the way, it wouldn't surprise me if they were putting some sort of satellite up there that could beam things into people's heads. I mean, they already have S-Quad tech, right? I played the audio last week where you could hear the billboard, and it was like whispering when people would walk by a certain spot on the sidewalk. So what happens if they crank that technology up and they start beaming that from a satellite down onto the planet? Just saying.
Well, they've been doing it with these guys that have been walking into the places and shooting soldiers and things, and then they've all been seeing it. They hear voices in their head. That was one of the things that used to come out. So maybe they are doing it just now.
Well, I mean, if they have the technology to do it from a billboard, you don't think these mad scientist types have been like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. You know what I mean? Like, we literally live in these, like, one of these B-rated, horrible science fiction movies we grew up in, Freeman.
Yeah, who thought that the evil empire would be known as Google?
Right?
Google. I mean, they've got a quantum computer, they've got AI technology, they've got the DARPA robots, and they have their own medical division as well, known as Calico. That's databasing DNA. Google is they're on it, man. I mean, how did they end up with all of this?
Dude, did you see what they're talking about now? They're saying that the internet is just going to pretty much disappear. There's going to be so many, everything is going to be so wired and connected to the Internet of Things that you just won't even notice it anymore. It'll just become part of your everyday life.
It really is that way now. You know, it's so close anyway. It's pretty amazing. Growing up in, you know, my dad created our first computer. It was way back in the 70s, built a Heathkit computer that was as big as a chest of drawers, you know? And I couldn't figure out what this thing would be good for. It just spit out punch codes, punch cards, and then I moved on to the TRS-80, right? Started learning some basic programming. But again, you only had text on your screen, you know? It was like, what good is this? And then this mysterious magic occurs, and we get this operating system platforms like Windows, and all of a sudden, and then still to this day, man, it blows my mind, because I was back in the first days of coding to figure out how, when you click this mouse on this little icon of a button or whatever, some, you know, webmaster put up there, that it goes, you know, this stuff just blows my mind. It really does. Like, I don't know.
So where do we go from here, there, Popeye?
MK Ultra.
I would ask relevant questions right now, but my brain has
is
totally
oozing out of your ear.
It is, man. It's so much.
I go for a coffee and you derail it, Joe Joseph. What are you doing here, man?
What I find interesting is that, you know, you think you know so much, and as you learn, as you continue down the road, Freeman, you know what? You find out just how little you know. The more time goes on, the more that you really realize just how little we know. Unreal.
Yeah. And we here in this podcast world have really been pushing that envelope. And I think we're finding the edges of it now. And we're trying to punch through and go, okay, where is this going? And that's really where Aliens from Hell came into the puzzle, because all of my research showed me that this all stems from occult roots, that it stems from shadowy men doing rituals inside of weird lodges and having structures built to channel energies or even entities into the building. And so the puzzle started to come when we say, look at the Nazis, and we realized that they had the Thule Society, and they were a psychical research group that was discovering the roots of Germanic tribes and bringing this all back to Atlantis and into inner earth beings. But they were using ritual magic to channel entities to gain knowledge and get technologies. And when questioned, this was their answer, you know, like the Bell Project, Die Glock, which is a very interesting study when you start looking into CERN and some of the other, like the relativistic heavy ionic collider, which actually ended up folding space-time. It's another collider like CERN, only in America. Their titles are Phoenix and Star, actually, their colliders. Anyway, you find that this device that the Nazis built, the Bell, that it carried counter-rotating liquid metal, say mercury, inside, and that using these counter-rotating forces in this liquid metal, they were able to actually fold space-time. Now, there's been a number of weird things that have come throughout this study, and one of them is these counter-rotating spirals. So the first time I came across that was with the study of the weird craft that were filmed by the Columbia Space Shuttle.
Yeah.
Now, there again, realize NASA is Nazi Freemasons, right? And the space shuttle titles are the Columbia. We're back to our goddess again. Columbia Endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis. And all challengers are destroyed, right? which was used in the XO music by Beyonce, which we can maybe get to the Mark of the Beast. I didn't even think of that. But okay, real quick. The counter-rotating idea came through this concept of seeing these weird crafts. So the Columbia Space Shuttle went up to seek a new power source, and they dragged a tether across the atmosphere or the ionosphere of planet Earth to try and drag up this energy. The energy was so strong that it actually broke the tether, which was about 12 miles long, off of the space shuttle, and it floated off into space. Using their infrared cameras, it looked like a giant fluorescent light bulb floating into space, and it was seeming to illuminate all these weird flitting craft that seemed to be 2 to 3 miles in length. And they had this weird spiral inside of them that was rotating and a weird little notch on them. And it turned that this matched what was called a Dropa stone in found in China, and it told of a tale of beings from Sirius. And we keep coming back to Sirius over and over again. But these craft were absolutely then shown to be intelligent, because in the scene with the Columbia Space Shuttle, when they're filming that, it kind of looks like they're weird amphibians or amoeba or something floating out in space, but they have this design of the spiral. So that spiral alerted David Sereda to this concept of hyperdimensional physics. And he drew out the spiral, and he used that to understand how hyperdimensional physics would work. Paul Laffoley is the Twin Tower architect. I interviewed him. He actually says that the bin Ladens came in and asked him where to put the demolition charges. So there you have that. But Paul Laffoley, beyond being the Twin Tower architect, was also a Kabbalist magician that designed time machines. And he has a device he calls the Levogyre. And again, it is this counter-rotating artwork that is supposed to teleport you into hyperdimensional space. So again and again, we keep finding this counter-rotating theory. Well, the Glock, the Bell project of the Nazis, did this very same thing, and supposedly folded space-time would disappear and show up in other places. This also shows up in that Disney movie with Tesla that has David Bowie as Tesla. Very much same kind of thoughts and theory on that. And, of course, we're Disney and David Bowie. And David Bowie is a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis, or Aleister Crowley's magical order. And you'll find that this all starts to tie into the puzzle that this OTO will tie in. So when we look to the Norway spiral, when that thing went up into space and it was sitting above the pulsing frequencies of the iSCAT antenna array, I believe that this was an attempt to punch a hole in the other dimension, because at that same moment, CERN was at maximum power, actually at world record breaking levels. CERN at the moment, the Norway spiral, which happened to be the very day Barack Obama showed up to get his Nobel Peace Prize. And the newspapers say, aliens welcome Obama for Peace Prize. Again, with the alien programming.
You know, Freeman, when I look at that spiral now and I hear that CERN are cranking up double power, it makes me actually wonder if all those boffins went away, scribbled down some calculations and worked out exactly what power they needed to do exactly what you're saying there. Possibly that attempt in Norway didn't quite come off the way they hoped.
Yeah, and the other one at the height of the International Space Station that most people didn't notice, the Cloud of Care, same thing. And you know, it's interesting that it was dispersed at the exact height of the International Space Station. Now, on the International Space Station, so there were two the Vatican astronomers, the two lead Vatican astronomers. There was Benjamin Funes and Consomagno. These are the two lead Jesuit Vatican astronomers in charge of all astronomy of the Vatican that came forward and said aliens are our space brothers and didn't suffer original sin because they weren't born of Eve, and we would absolutely baptize E.T. the moment he landed on planet Earth. These are two lead astronomers. They were sent, after saying this, they were attached to CERN. And they went to CERN as they launched this device up to the International Space Station known as the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. Now, this was a device placed on the outside of the space station that can see the anti-universe. Now, the craziest part about this is that the AMS, the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, that sees the anti-universe, their corporate logo is a reptilian claw. The company is known as Grawlator. And so, this is all getting very, very strange right now.
I'm sure it's all coincidental, Freeman.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure it has nothing to do with their beliefs or anything like that. When it comes to time travel, I think that there's more to time travel than just time travel. I don't think it can be explained as simply as just saying time travel, or at least our concept of time travel. I think there's more to it. I think it's a cross between time and interdimensional travel, because if you understand quantum physics, time really isn't linear, right? It doesn't go in one straight line. Time, the past, the future, and now are all happening at the same time. So I think time travel is more so of an interdimensional type thing than anything else. Thoughts?
Yeah, it goes right to Interstellar and the whole Tesseract theory. And I would say that's we try to think of things as linear, but absolutely no way that time is linear.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think they know stuff that we don't. I think they have access to technologies that we don't. I mean, I think it's quite possible that they might be able to do interdimensional travel. That's maybe one of the things they're doing up there with that secret space program.
Well, Popeye, we had Alfred Weber on the other night, and he was telling us about things like chronovisors, where you could look into different time
that was
periods.
crazy, Kev.
I mean, he was even referring back to Nostradamus having this kind of technology as well. So I'm a firm believer that they do have this. And that takes us back to Mars again as well, because, Marty, we were being told about bases on Mars and traveling to Mars bases and stuff like that. And it's funny how all of this is connected. And, Freeman, you brought up the OTO at one point there, and that's how we can almost segue into the whole Hollywood thing and what's going on there, man.
Yeah, definitely. When people are calling out to say, look, they're giving Illuminati symbols, what they really mean is that they're giving out Ordo Templi Orientis symbols, magic symbols from this sex cult. And more specifically, these are towards the Typhonian order of the Templi Orientis. Okay, so Kenneth Grant was an acolyte of Aleister Crowley, and he tried to outline and define the Typhonian order of OTO. Now, Typhon is the Lord of the Abyss. And when you start to look into the signs and symbols around us in Hollywood, you'll consistently be brought back to the abyss. And this is something, okay, as an example, Winston Churchill was taught the peace sign by Aleister Crowley, who was an MI6 agent, right? MI5, whichever. He was taught this peace sign of Typhon, the Lord of the Abyss, who is Leviathan. He's the beast, Typhon, the peace sign was the watery sign. The swastika was the solar sign. And so Winston Churchill was given that peace sign as a magical attack on the Nazi solar forces, taught to him by the magician Aleister Crowley. So that happens to be the very symbol for the show The Voice, right? The biggest enslavement camp that has ever been. But anyway, we can get to that. But
Freeman, when you look at that with the actual symbol there, it shows you how many different layers things are happening on, because you know how different battles as well. I mean, usually they wait for like planetary signs or astronomical alignments. It just shows you just how multi-layered our reality really is and how they know how to access it.
Right. There's like ciphers or codes that you can imprint and cause effect. Absolutely. I mean, magic has been around far too long for anybody to just discount it as hocus pocus. It really, there's deep, thick-hearted, all the smartest people in the world, I mean, have studied this magic. And so, if they're not saying it's crazy, then you better start thinking about it. But the Typhonian order of the OTO, their specific purpose is communication with intergalactic beings or with interdimensional beings. That is the one purpose of this. And it all goes back to this abyss, which is a place in magic known where the Qliphoth, or the fallen angels, exist. The shells, or as Robert Anton Wilson put it, the souls of those that died insane. So magicians talk about having to cross over this abyss to reach heaven. So you're trying to make your way up the tree of life and in magic and find your holy guardian angel. But there are paths that are long and safe, but you got to learn all along the way. You got to know all the signs and symbols that are associated with each of the stations. But the quick path is straight up the middle from earth to heaven. But in order to do that, you have to cross over the abyss. Now, that path in the Hebrew mysticism of the Tree of Life is the G path. And this would explain the G on all of the Masonic compass and square symbolism. It is the direct path, but it's the dangerous path because it takes you over the abyss, where most people lose their minds. Now, magicians would say that these demons inside of here are all just a part of us that you should confront and get to know. And but at the same time, there's these signs and symbols that denote that very place in the Tree of Life, the abyss. And when you look at the voice, they have both the VV symbolism there. The number for the abyss is 66. And in Hebrew, 6 is the letter V. So you have the peace sign with the voice logo, and that makes the VV symbolism, making 66, which is the number of the abyss. Not to be confused with 666, which would be Volkswagen's logo, right? Because it has 3 V's on it. But their corporate logo, the company that puts out the voice, is Talpa. And if you look at their corporate logo, it is the Kabbalistic Jewish Tree of Life with heaven in the abyss. So they have moved the point that is heaven into the abyss, and that is the corporate logo for the people that put out the voice. Talpa is the name of the company. Now, on another level, I've been talking about this for a long, long time. We discovered that the Typhonian order of the OTO had a sign that was the mark of the beast. And this sign was the X-Men logo, the O and the X, the X-Files logo, the Xbox logo, the new operating system for Mac is the OX. And then you have even Beyonce with her XO album, which starts with the destruction of the Challenger audio playing before the music begins. This O and X is even surgically placed inside the back of the head of Rex Diabolus Church, the ex-high priest of the Church of Satan, has the O and the X in the back of his skull because he knows this is the mark of the beast. Well, all of a sudden, here comes Madonna, and she comes out to play the Super Bowl. Okay, this year we get to watch Katy Perry and Lenny Kravitz, and I guarantee we're going to see diamonds in her show. We've actually been outlining, and I've been asking all the experts on mind control of what we can expect to see symbolized in Katy Perry's Super Bowl performance this year. So you go check out my podcast. You can see what Stuart Swerdlow or Fritz Springmeier and all of them had to say about it, Jay Widener.
And you know, Freeman, you brought up diamonds there, and I think Rihanna was the main one that brought this into the public attention. Every second song she sings, it's got diamonds and things like that in it.
It's the military MK Ultra programming. So that is the symbol for
that
for the
takes
military.
us to Katy Perry again, because one of her songs, she was shaving her hair off and going to boot camp.
Yes, exactly. She is the military. When you look at our celebrities, you should look at them like you're watching Hunger Games, because these people are victims. They may have, let their egos get them up to their positions, but they become victims. Just like in the Hunger Games, once you're on the freedom train, you can't get off the freedom train without dying. And that's the same for these celebrities. They are now trapped in this military-industrial matrix, and there's really no way out but death. And so you might as well ride the ride.
Wait! In the Hunger Games, there's the thing called the Freedom Train, and you can't get off the Freedom Train without dying.
Well,
I've never seen the movie.
Okay.
I bring that up only because Freeman, you could appreciate this. What did Kathy O'Brien and others say that whole sex slave, drug mule, mind control slave cult that they have running through the country music industry and everything? Well, that the powers that shouldn't be use the country music industry and a few other things. They call the women, well, the whole thing, the freedom train. That's what Kathy O'Brien referenced it. So it's just interesting that there you have you can't get off the freedom train unless you die. Well, that's pretty much what happens to those women. They get used up, abused, and then, they find them dead from a quote unquote drug overdose or suicide.
Exactly. And honestly, that's what I was referencing. I'm actually become really good friends with Kathy O'Brien, and next month, Jamie and I were going to go stay with them for a few days with Kathy and Mark Phillips. We'll be getting some broadcasts from that, but they're real excited to work with Jamie and I. They've read weird stuff, and they love us. So I was actually referencing Kathy when I said the Freedom Train. It's more that they are on this train, and they show you what Kathy is telling you.
It's like a physical. It's like a physical
train
visual
that they're on.
representation.
Well, guys, do we think that's what the likes of Katy Perry and people like that are maybe subjected to?
Yes.
That Kathy O'Brien talks about.
Okay, if you guys want to know step for step how to do trauma-based mind control, all right, Fritz Springmeier has his book, How to Create a Totally Undetectable Mind Control Slave, right? If you take that book and you watch the Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, who is also a Kabbalist. He had a Kabbalistic wedding with Demi Moore, who is also a Kabbalist, and also another military female production, PR woman. Anyway, the Butterfly Effect is actually step by step how trauma-based mind control comes about, and even the effects that Ashton Kutcher goes through in this story are the same, similar to what the victim will suffer, having time jumps, having weird, all of that fits in to everything. So if you want to know what trauma-based mind control entails, then just watch the Butterfly Effect and realize how horrific it really is, and how horrific it is that they made a movie to display it all to us.
In plain sight, right in your face.
And Crowley, he has a book known as Moonchild. So what we're talking about is taking a celebrity and opening them up as a channel so that entities can invade their soul. And this was called Moonchild when like Jack Parsons of Jet Propulsion Laboratories with L. Ron Hubbard, they were trying to form a Moonchild. And some say that they were using the nukes and the nuclear tests to actually produce a Moonchild in a woman. And so this would be a god form that would be incarnated on the planet. And Crowley's book, The Moonchild,
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Okay, folks, we are back. I don't know what happened there, but it's the last section of the Freaky Friday. Tonight we've got Popeye, Joe Joseph, Johnny Whistles, and Marty, and obviously the man himself, Freeman. This has been absolutely brilliant. Now, Popeye, I know you've got a question for Freeman here, so I'll give it over to you, man.
Yeah, last week, there was a meme actually made out of this, me and my riding my interdimensional Velociraptor. But there was a baseball card series when we were kids, right? They did more than just baseball cards. They did, like Marvel Comics and stuff and all that. They put out all these different baseball card series. Well, one of them was called Dinosaurs Attack. Right? And I just wanted to see if Freeman remembered it when we were kids, because this baseball card series, I'm trying to find a video on YouTube so I can drop it in the chat for the listeners. But it was basically these interdimensional, like reptilian creatures from another dimension. Somehow, scientists here, I don't know if they were tricked into it or not, but they opened up a portal, and this, in order to destroy humanity, these reptilian creatures sent dinosaurs back through this portal to destroy humanity, and then they were going to come in and take over whatever was left. And it starts off as like this little dinosaur, just, oops, we had this time travel experiment gone awry thing. And then it ends up with this more sinister plot. And like the name of the station, if I remember correctly, was called Prometheus. That was the station where and it was out in space. It was a space station out in outer space, and then there's this huge like Stargate, the guy standing in front of, and this demon creature comes through. It's right in your face. Did you ever see that?
I don't recall that. I'm sorry, I don't.
It-
But I know that they absolutely give so much more away in cartoons. It's mind boggling.
The Cartoon Network is. Have you ever seen some of the cartoons, like the quote unquote adult cartoons on that show or on that whole network?
I was traveling most of the time during that era, but I caught some.
There is a lot of stuff hidden in there. If you go back and you watch some of these series, there's a lot of things. There's just stuff that there was a series called Lucy, Daughter of the Devil.
Oh yeah, somebody just showed that to me. Have you seen Mr. Pickles?
No, what is it?
Oh, that's a new one. I got that in a section on my website called Weird Videos.
That's
Whenever I
strange.
find strange stuff, I put it in the weird video section. It's a satanic dog that ritually abuses and molests the mom and all this stuff and takes bodies down to his satanic lair in the inner earth. And it's a pretty sick and twisted cartoon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, is this on Cartoon Network right now?
Yeah, that's now.
Wow, this is what your kids watch, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And I think, Marty, you were going to jump in there, man.
I was just shocked, at that sort of stuff being played on kids' channels and stuff. I kind of thought you were talking about the Adult Swim stuff, not Cartoon Network.
Oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I haven't had television in a long, long time. So, but yeah, I think it's Cartoon Network.
Would it surprise us anymore, though, when we're living in a world where a 9-year-old has been looked upon as the next supermodel and been perved over by deviants? I mean, this is the kind of sicker side of it, Popeye.
I wrote an article years ago, or I didn't even write it. It was more so just a repost of an article about I wrote a little editor's note above it about Miley Cyrus's little sister at the time. She was like 9, and her parents were okay with this. They were launching a lingerie line for kids her age. First of all, let me explain something to you. If I ever have a daughter, and anyone ever tries to sell my 9-year-old daughter lingerie, that'll be the last thing that guy ever tries to sell. Ever. In his life. That would also be the last breath that person ever takes. What is wrong with people? Why would you want... I understand that children, when they're in their teens, maybe 15, 16, that women start to come into their adulthood. Why would you make lingerie for 9-year-olds? That's disgusting. There's a line. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a line. I don't care what you try to... Ugh.
Well, this goes back again to Aleister Crowley and his prophecy of the Aeon of Horus. And when he was saying that we were moving into the Aeon of Horus, which was the crowned and conquering child, that every child should be shown every sexual act before adolescence. This was part of the belief system of the OTO. And so we're seeing that being engineered into the society. And when you watch like Disney-owned corporations such as ABC, you will see them putting out shows like Modern Family, where they start to legitimize perversion, right? And then also this whole, Miley Cyrus is another classic example of how they're utilizing this young girl. We did a video on Hannah Montana products across the world. Like we did not find a single store that did not have Hannah Montana products, and that's in 3, maybe 4 continents. We have a 3-hour long film of all this Hannah Montana products, but now, of course, as Miley Cyrus and her Bangers tour, she's riding around on a big dildo or even a penis, doing all kinds of sexual perversion up on the stage. And
I want to know, Freeman, like, how do fathers, like, not, like, how do they go, oh, yeah, we can go to the Miley Cyrus concert, I'll take you. How do they not, like, see what their daughter is being programmed for?
Yeah. And the children that are in that audience, it's mind-boggling that parents aren't aware. And then the other big issue is that people think that this is just the state of the world as it is, and that mankind is just being more and more degraded. But I can show through evidence after evidence that this is actually social engineering, and that they need us to be in this perverted state in order to, manipulate us. So
Well,
it's really an agenda.
It keeps us in base level consciousness. It keeps us down at that base. That's what 666 is. It keeps mankind down at that lower level, so we're easily manipulated. Because if mankind actually started to put things aside like that and actually started to think on a higher level, they wouldn't be able to be controlled, and all of this would end tomorrow. And these people that run everything, the powers that shouldn't be, would become irrelevant, and it would be poof, goodbye.
And then,
It really
Popeye,
would.
you've got the other flip side of that with the Super Bowl, like Freeman was saying, coming up, where you've got like a billion people tuning into these mega rituals.
The stupid bowl.
They must be harvesting some kind of energy there, even if it's subconsciously. We must be changing something.
I'm willing to bet. Here's my prediction for the Super Bowl halftime show. Tons of symbolism. Tons of whatever you want to call it. OTO symbolism, Illuminati symbol, whatever label you want to put on it. You're going to have tons of that crap. I'm sure there'll be some sort of esoteric, occult type theme to the whole thing itself.
Say it ain't so.
Katy Perry will probably be riding, on the back of Satan, or, flying around the thing on wires. Who knows? At this point, back in the day, 5 years ago, if you talked about this, people would be like, "You're silly. They don't do that kind of stuff." It's so blatant now. Even mainstream publications are like, "Did we just witness an Illuminati ritual at the Super Bowl?" Like, it's just become that in your face.
And again, the misnomer of Illuminati throws everybody off the scent of the true perpetrators. As if you start looking at Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati or something, then you're going to be led down a dead end. And again, like I was saying, that eye in the pyramid is actually a magical effect. It's not just a sign and symbol. It's something that magicians do to invoke an entity into you. Yeah, you're going to... When my fans saw Madonna go on the stage at the Super Bowl and give her 33-minute sermon, is what she called it, she displayed the mark of the beast so many times on the stage that I couldn't even keep count. And, of course, the VV symbolism as well. And only my fans who had been knowing about this Typhonian order of the OTO and their connection to the Mark of the Beast knew that that's what Madonna was doing. Now, as I say, you can see the Mark of the Beast as the operating system for Macintosh, the Xbox logo, on and on, X-Files, X-Men, which even has a beast, and realize how this all plays into that puzzle.
And Freeman,
but
I've even dropped a picture into the chat below because you tipped my kind of interest in Fringe. Now, Fringe also has their kind of logos as well. And with it being an FF, which is a 6-6, we've actually hijacked that for our Freaky Friday logo.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I know. On Friends of Freeman, I was either going to go with FOF or FFF. I was stuck with it, really. It was 666 no matter how I turned it. So we have a website called The Friendship Agenda. And The Friendship Agenda is our own personal MySpace, Facebook. And it's just people I know, 4,000 of them, that gather together all the time. So come over to friendshipagenda.com and become a friend and find a bunch of people that actually know what you're talking about and will invite you to their homes all over the world. So it's really a great thing. I also wanted to mention to the listeners that Sunday I'm doing a special broadcast on Freeman TV. It's Ask a Freemason Anything. So I'm having a Freemason come on, live video, and you guys can ask him whatever you want. He's a member of 9 different orders, all the way up to the Scottish Rite. He's not a 33rd, but he's up there in all of the other regions. He's the secretary of the Rosicrucians. He's a Knight Mason. He's all of the different levels. So he's opened himself up to be asked anything. So this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm trying to do that so that international people can come and join in as well.
Let me get this straight. Joe Joseph's going to be on with you this Sunday.
I was going to say Donnie Gilson.
But, we brought up Fringe there, Freeman, and that kind of takes us back to where we started at Star Wars with the Force and things, because Fringe, directed by J.J. Abrams, and in my opinion, he is the biggest CIA director there is out there right now, and he is making the new Star Wars.
Without a doubt. and even openly. So when he put out Alias, J.J. Abrams was getting the plots from the CIA. The CIA wrote the first season of Alias, and it wasn't hidden. Now the CIA did not have a open liaison to Hollywood for all this time. The FBI, of course, have had liaisons in Hollywood for a long time. The military, of course, since the beginning of Hollywood. But the CIA were always shown as bumbling fools in most of the shows. And so they wanted to step up, and they got themselves their own liaison to Hollywood. And we get J.J. Abrams and the Alias series. So Jennifer Garner, the star of Alias, actually was in CIA recruitment commercials. So you can go watch her in the CIA, and they said she was a great way to represent it. And it, Alias showed you how human the CIA could really be. Now let's realize, first of all, that the CIA formed out of the Skull and Bones Society. And you can listen to these guys give their horrific rituals online. It sounds like somebody's being murdered and bloody screams. And that's where, of course, George W. Bush and George Bush and John Kerry all come up through the Skull and Bones Society. But that's where the CIA comes from. So never lose the occult roots of these organizations. We say something like CIA, people think government. Okay, so absolutely, J.J. Abrams openly working with CIA, giving us even Star Trek, and that ties back to the channeling of the Nine, because Gene Roddenberry actually was sitting in on those channelings of the Nine, and a lot of that information got written into the Star Trek series. And that's why even Star Trek Next Generation has the 9 lead characters. But yeah, I lost where I was going.
I mean, the 9 in itself, that's probably a show all into itself, Freeman. But with J.J. Abrams, he moved on then to things like Fringe, Persons of Interest, which I think is totally profound. That's where they're absolutely flaunting surveillance in our face.
Yeah, they're just making it normal, Modern Family, just making it normal. And yeah, absolutely. Now J.J. Abrams coupled together with Disney Co. to bring us the latest Star Wars. Now, one of the critical things that we show in Weird Stuff, our book, is this social engineering program of the princess programming, the princess warrior programming. And so as you walk down your store aisles in your Target, Walmart, or whatever department store, you will see the blue aisle for the boys, which has it's always the same. You'll see it'll be Star Wars, but it'll always be the dark side. It'll always be a Stormtrooper or Darth Vader or Darth Maul. It'll always be the dark side. Or if it is a good side, they're always in a war type situation with their lightsabers or whatever. And then Spider-Man, who always gives the Satan symbol for when he's shooting his things, and he's also known for lying, because that's what Spider-Man has to do all his life. And I'm trying to figure out why they use Spider-Man so much. But you'll see these same things, and then Transformers, which of course are all the military programming. And then over on the girls' side, you'll see nothing but princess programming, all the pink and everything else. And it's these two polarities that they utilize to keep pushing the military-industrial complex forward. So we're actually subjecting our children to mind control techniques every time we walk them into a Walmart or a Target, and you won't be able to escape the Disney programming along with this Princess Warrior programming. It's crazy.
Wow, where do you want to go now, guys? We're running out of time, so I'm going to mute up Joe, Marty, Johnny, Popeye, whoever.
Brilliant conversation. Absolutely. It's been a good one.
Speaking of Hollywood and interdimensional travel and aliens, you've seen the Avengers movie, right, Freeman?
Yes. I have a horrible recall for movies, but go for it. I might remember.
At the end of the Avengers movie, they bring in an interdimensional army from to come and wipe out mankind, and they're called the Chitauri. Well, that's the name that the Zulu shaman have for the reptilian humanoids.
Yeah. And J.J. Abrams is writing that kind of stuff in, like in the Star Trek series. The first planet they go to is Nibiru. Yeah, you got
to wonder why they're putting it in there.
Yeah,
it does. It raises a question. That was the one thing. Like when I saw the latest Star Trek, I thought, what was it, Into the Darkness, or so, I can't remember what it was called. Yeah. But anyway, The latest one, it was when I saw Nibiru on there. You got to be absolutely. I said every tinfoil hatter in the world right now is losing their freaking minds.
Yeah, and you know that's why he did that, right? You know,
of course.
And then there's the other layer, the guy Josh Whedon. You know, he's another one, and he came out with Cabin in the Woods. Of course, he was famous for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but and the vampire programming, that's a whole nother topic, right? And we get into that as well. But Josh Whedon came out with Cabin in the Woods, modernizing ritual sacrifice and interdimensional beings and stuff like that. So he's another one that I have on my list on that sort of.
And what do you make of this? I mean, myself, Marty, and Johnny, big, huge fans of The Walking Dead, Freeman. The zombie kind of programming that's going on just now as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely in a post-apocalyptic programming going on right now. All of our clothing, as you look around, is going to gray and dulls and shredded and torn, and they're dressing up in a post-apocalyptic world. And the fact that we actually, in our last decade of broadcasting, did get to cover legitimate zombie appearances on the planet. I mean, that stuff was crazy. The people with the bath salts.
Yeah, it was bath salts, Freeman. Don't be silly.
Yeah, don't worry. I don't even know what that is. And one of them had smoked that fake marijuana, and he started. This was the news story anyway, and he started chasing his family around, acting like a dog, and then actually ate the family dog.
What do you think this is then, Freeman? Do you think this is some kind of targeted individual program going on, some kind of mind control again?
It does seem to be that way. When you look at the guys that put out Kobe, about the African dictator. Why can't I think of that? Sorry, but he went crazy too.
Coney,
yeah,
that's the one. Yeah. He ended up going naked, didn't he?
Yeah, he ran around rubbing one out in the middle of an intersection.
Lost it. Yeah, lost
it. And then you got the guy from Creed. The singer from Creed, Scott.
Oh, yeah?
And
he
he's
just went
running
nuts
around.
like a week ago.
Yeah, it said that he was a CIA assassin assigned to kill Barack Obama. Or at least his wife said that to 911 when she phoned in. And now we have John Bush, NASCAR driver, swearing that his wife is a contract assassin for the CIA. We have Chuck Barris of The Gong Show and The Dating Game coming out saying that he was actually a contract killer for the CIA while he would take the winners on their prize vacations. He was actually off killing people. And when you start to look to Hollywood, and this is where the diamond programming comes in, the Hollywood Army, they're all being trained and conditioned in these, many, many fighting styles. I mean, Keanu Reeves, how many fighting styles does he know now? I know Kung Fu, right? Or Chuck, but yeah, we're building, they have this force of agents that can go anywhere. Bob Hope was another one that was supposedly doing this sort of thing that can go and just, assassinate people and no one would ever believe it.
Everyone absolutely knocked into silence, Freeman. I get a sneaky suspicion that you really have enjoyed this Freaky Friday experience. You've been a pretty good fit for this show, wouldn't you agree, guys?
Absolutely.
That's been amazing. Fantastic.
Well, we've still got a few minutes left here, Freeman, so I don't know, where do we want to go from here?
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to make the whole 3 hours.
You see, time just kind of dilates.
Yeah, because what we actually do is we fold space-time using this elaborate metals and all this gets crazy stuff.
Joe is actually a clone of Henry Kissinger.
No, Henry VIII. Let's get it right.
Johnny Whistles is sitting stirring the mercury as we speak. Ain't you, Whistles?
That's right. He's got a cauldron of hot mercury right now. He's just spinning around in a Saturnalia type of ritual.
I'm just sending all this info to my Templar friends.
Yeah. Let me see if I can finalize this with a little bit of hope. As my intro stated, I like to bring a little bit of hope into this crazy puzzle. Because one thing this all shows us is the power of humanity.
Yeah.
We have the power to actually manifest an entirely different experience, an entirely different world through morphogenics. I mean, they use us They keep us contained in this mental prison so that we only manifest this world that they want. And when you start to learn that we actually have the power to save the world with our minds without any shots being fired, then you start to realize our true power. And I have spent my entire life wandering the planet Earth, or mostly America, and just running into loving, caring, generous people in the most synchronistic fashion that has shown me that the universe is alive and working in our favors. What happens is that we are formed into a mental prison that doesn't allow us to have synchronistic events occur, because synchronistic events are unknowns. They're random events. They're putting yourselves in chaos, right? And allowing the universe to take care of things. This is something that we're not at all conditioned to do. And it was a freaky thing for me. It's the first tarot card in the magical tarot that is the Fool as he steps off the cliff and goes off and either dies or flies. And this is what I did. And I found that we can fly. And so I want to say to everybody listening that the change that we need is not as difficult as we think, but it requires us to be the neurons of the planet. And the only way neurons will fire is through connections. So we got to go out there and start talking to people, start meeting the other inhabitants around us, quit being frightened of everybody at the grocery store. Just go ahead and say hello. Go ahead and be weird and share yourself with the world, and it will open itself to you and lead you to things that you never, ever thought of. That's
well
said.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show with us this evening. I think the guys can agree with that one.
Oh, absolutely. I second that, Marty.
Yeah, I had a great time talking with you guys.
Definitely,
Yeah,
Freeman.
brilliant.
So, again, Freeman, where can people find your work and your latest stuff?
All right. Well, there's over 10,000 hours of stuff on freemantv.com. Dig deep, click everything. I put every link there. Everything's safe. Everything's going to lead you to something mysterious. And so don't be afraid to just go there and click. There's no such thing as an old show on freemantv.com. So go back, check out the archives, check out all the stuff, all the writing that has been up there. 10 years of stuff is there, plus more. So you'll never run out of things to do. I do have a new show going now. I've revamped the Free Zone, and maybe we'll get it onto Truth Frequency here in the very near future. But I am doing a 2-hour host situation where I'm inviting guests, which was something I didn't actually do in my first 10 years. I generally just did my own talking, my own show, my own theories. I was really just giving you my research live on the air. So now I'm bringing in the guests, and and it's been a lot of fun. And so every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Freeman TV, I broadcast another podcast, and we all sit there and chat together. And of course, thefriendshipagenda.com. If you're ready to get away from Facebook and go find some people that actually know what you're talking about and won't judge you for your posts, then come over to friendshipagenda.com. It's free and it's there. And also, if people want to subscribe to freemantv.com, this will help me grow, help me get a better, bigger show. I'm gonna be bringing you stuff from all over the world, and I'm starting these new, like, Ask a Mason, which I'll be doing the first one this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Freeman, that's us out of time, folks. Stay tuned for Chris and Sheree G.